Hey there, and welcome to Crime for Sleep. I know you're having trouble falling asleep, so let me keep you company with true crime stories from around the world. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where did you first hear this one? If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now get comfortable, and let's get into tonight's case. Crime 1. When I got home from work, my printer was running. I hadn't sent anything to it. I live alone, and it wasn't even turned on that morning. I approached uneasy and pulled the fresh pages from the tray. It was a report, surveillance logs, incident summaries, crime scene photos, all centered on a specific victim. The file read like an internal investigation. The final page was a map. My house was circled in red ink. The last photo was taken from across the street through my window. I checked the metadata. It had been printed from my account, but the username wasn't mine. The victim's name appeared on every page. A woman in her 30s, professional looking, with kind eyes that seemed to stare back at me through the grainy photographs. The surveillance logs showed her daily routine, coffee shop visits, grocery runs, evening walks. Someone had been watching her for weeks. The level of detail was disturbing. What she wore, who she spoke to, even the brand of shampoo she bought. I sat at my kitchen table, spreading the pages across the surface. The paper felt cold between my fingers, and I noticed my hands were trembling slightly. The incident summaries were clinical, detached. They described her disappearance as if it were a routine case file, but there were inconsistencies. The dates didn't align. Some entries were made after she was reported missing, yet they contained information about her activities from those very days. The smell of fresh ink filled the room, sharp and chemical. I traced my finger along the margins of the documents, looking for any indication of their origin. The formatting was professional, the letterhead unfamiliar. At the bottom of each page there was a small notation, authorized personnel only. But I wasn't authorized personnel. I was just someone who came home to find these files materializing from my own printer. I turned to the crime scene photos. They were taken inside what appeared to be her apartment. Everything looked normal at first glance: a tidy living room, an unmade bed, a coffee cup still sitting on the counter. But as I studied them closer, I began to notice things that seemed wrong. The cup was positioned perfectly in the center of the counter, as if placed there deliberately. The bed was unmade, but the sheets were pulled back in a way that looked staged. Even the dust on the furniture seemed to follow unnatural patterns. The surveillance logs contained entries that made my stomach turn. Someone had been inside her home, documenting her personal belongings, her habits, her vulnerabilities. They knew which window she left cracked for air, which door she sometimes forgot to lock. They knew she talked to herself while cooking and that she fell asleep with the television on. The level of invasion was suffocating. I called the police. The officer who answered sounded tired, disinterested. When I explained what I'd found, there was a long pause. He asked me to repeat the victim's name. Another pause. Then he told me there was no record of anyone by that name being reported missing. No case file, no investigation. He suggested I might be the victim of a prank, though his tone suggested he didn't believe his own words. After hanging up, I sat in the growing darkness of my living room. I hadn't turned on the lights, and the documents seemed to glow in the dim light filtering through my windows. I thought about the photograph taken from across the street, the one showing my own house. Someone had been watching me the same way they'd been watching her. The realization crept over me like cold water. I went to my computer and checked my print history. The files were there, listed in my account, but the timestamps were wrong. According to the log, they'd been sent to print while I was at work, but from my home computer. I live alone. The only explanation was that someone had been in my house, using my equipment, accessing my accounts. That night I barely slept. Every sound seemed amplified, the house settling, the refrigerator humming, the occasional car passing outside. I kept thinking about the woman in the photographs, about her daily routine that someone had documented so meticulously. I wondered if she'd ever felt this same creeping sense of being watched, of being studied like a specimen. The next morning I found more pages in my printer. This time the documents were different. They were about me. My routine, my habits, my vulnerabilities, the same clinical language, the same detached tone. Someone had been compiling a file on me, documenting my life with the same precision they'd used for her. The final page was a photograph of me sleeping, taken from inside my bedroom. I checked the locks on my doors, the latches on my windows. Everything was secure, undisturbed, but someone had been inside. Someone was still watching. The files kept coming, night after night, each batch more detailed than the last. They knew things about me that I'd never told anyone, habits I didn't even realize I had. I started staying awake, monitoring my house, my computer, my printer, but the files appeared anyway, as if materializing from thin air. The woman from the first batch of documents began appearing in my files too. Photographs of us in the same locations, taken days apart. The coffee shop where I stopped each morning, the grocery store where I shopped, the park where I walked. We've been following the same patterns, living parallel lives under the same watchful eye. The investigation files began to merge our stories. The surveillance logs showed her disappearance and my daily activities in the same timeline. The crime scene photos included images of my apartment, taken from angles that suggested someone had been inside while I was away. The case summaries described both of us as subjects of interest, though for what purpose I couldn't determine. I tried to find her to verify her existence, to understand the connection between us, but every lead went nowhere. The addresses in the files led to empty lots. The phone numbers were disconnected. The people mentioned in the surveillance logs didn't exist. It was as if she was a ghost, a fabrication, a story told through carefully constructed documents. But the files kept coming, and with each new batch I began to question my own memories, my own reality. Had I been the one watching her? Had I been the one compiling these reports, documenting her life with obsessive precision? The handwriting in the margins looked familiar. The photographic angles suggested knowledge of both our routines that only someone living between our two worlds could possess. The printer runs every night now. I don't check the files anymore. I know what they contain, more evidence of a crime I'm not sure I committed, more proof of a victim I'm not certain exists. The woman with the kind eyes stares back at me from every page, and sometimes I wonder if she's staring at me from the mirror as well. The username on the files was never mine, but it wasn't anyone else's either. It was something in between, something that existed in the space between observer and observed, between investigator and investigated. The files were already printed before I arrived home that first day, but they were also being written as I read them, created by the very act of my discovery. I don't know who she was, I don't know who I am. But I know that somewhere in some other house, someone else is coming home to find their printer running, pulling fresh pages from the tray, reading about a victim they might recognize, wondering if they're the one being watched or the one doing the watching. The files are still printing, the story continues, and I'm no longer sure which side of the camera I'm on. Crime 2, I needed a storage unit on short notice. The facility assigned me one they claimed was freshly vacated. When I unlocked it, a sharp chemical smell hit me. Inside were tarps, duct tape rolls, and plastic containers stacked neatly, but no dust, no signs of age. On the back wall was a corkboard filled with newspaper clippings and photos, people posed in normal settings, but with strange codes written over their faces. One of the photos was of my apartment building. I showed the manager. He denied ever renting me that unit. When I returned with the police, the contents were gone, and so was the unit itself. The chemical smell lingered in my nostrils for days afterward. It wasn't bleach or cleaning products, something sharper, more industrial, something that made my throat close up when I breathed too deeply. The manager's face when I approached him stayed with me too. He looked through me like I was speaking a foreign language, his eyes never quite meeting mine. His hands shook as he shuffled through papers that seemed to multiply on his desk. I kept the key, metal warm in my palm, edges worn smooth by countless hands before mine. The number etched into the plastic tag read 47, but when I walked the rows of identical orange doors, I couldn't find that number anywhere. The facility stretched further than I remembered, corridors branching into corridors, fluorescent lights humming overhead like trapped insects. My footsteps echoed differently in some sections, as if the walls were hollow. The newspaper clippings haunted me most. Local missing person reports, accident summaries, obituaries torn from various publications, all featuring people who looked ordinary, unremarkable. A woman walking her dog, a man leaving a grocery store, a teenager at a bus stop, but those codes scrawled across their faces in red ink transformed them into something else entirely. Letters and numbers that meant nothing to me but felt heavy with purpose. I photographed everything before showing the manager. The images on my phone looked different somehow, grainier, as if the camera struggled to capture what I'd witnessed. The woman in the apartment building photo wore a yellow sundress and carried a purse I recognized. She lived 2 floors below me. I'd seen her collecting mail, watering plants on her balcony, talking on her phone in the lobby. Her code was different from the others, more complex, more urgent. Sleep became impossible. Every creak in my building's walls made me freeze. Every neighbor's footstep in the hallway sent my heart racing. I found myself checking and rechecking my locks, peering through the peephole at shadows that might have been people or might have been nothing at all. The woman in the yellow sundress stopped appearing in the lobby. Her plants withered on the balcony. I called the police 3 times before they agreed to meet me at the facility. The officer who responded had tired eyes and coffee stains on his uniform. He listened to my story with the patience of someone who'd heard stranger things, but I could see the skepticism growing with each detail I provided. When we arrived at the storage facility, the manager was different. Younger, more helpful, with a smile that never wavered even when I insisted he wasn't the same person I'd spoken to before. Unit 47 didn't exist in their system, never had, according to the computer records that the new manager pulled up with eager efficiency. The rows of storage units ended at 46, then skipped to 48. The officer walked the entire facility with me, checking every door, every number, every lock. His radio crackled with distant voices discussing other emergencies, other mysteries that demanded immediate attention. But I remembered the layout, the exact position of that door, 3 units down from the corner, directly across from a unit with a dented handle and rust stains shaped like teardrops. That space now held nothing but a blank wall painted the same industrial beige as the rest of the building. The concrete floor showed no signs of disturbance, no marks where a door might have been installed or removed. The photographs on my phone told a different story. They showed the unit clearly, the contents arranged with surgical precision, the corkboard covered in its grim collection. But when I tried to show them to the officer, the images appeared corrupted. Pixels scattered across the screen like digital snow, faces blurred beyond recognition, codes reduced to meaningless smears of color. I started visiting the storage facility regularly, walking the corridors with growing desperation. Different managers worked different shifts, but none of them remembered me. The security cameras, they assured me, recorded everything, but the footage from the day in question had been accidentally overwritten during a system upgrade that no one could explain in detail. The woman in the yellow sundress never returned to her apartment. Her mail accumulated in the lobby until building management finally removed it. Her plants died completely, leaving behind empty pots and scattered soil that no one bothered to clean up. When I asked other tenants about her, they gave me blank stares and changed the subject with uncomfortable speed. I found myself researching the people from the newspaper clippings, cross-referencing names with local records, searching for patterns that might explain their connection to each other and to that impossible unit. Most of the cases remained open, their resolutions listed as pending or under investigation. The authorities had theories but no conclusions, suspects but no arrests, evidence but no coherent narrative to tie everything together. The codes bothered me most of all. I drew them from memory, filled notebooks with possible interpretations, consulted experts in cryptography and linguistics who offered interesting theories but no definitive answers. Some suggested coordinates, others believed they represented dates or personal identification numbers. One professor thought they might be references to case files or database entries, but couldn't specify which database or which agency might use such a system. My own building felt different now. Hallways that had once seemed familiar now stretched longer than they should. Neighbors I'd known for years looked at me with suspicion when I asked about the woman in the yellow sundress, as if I were speaking about someone who had never existed at all. The building's management company had no record of her lease, no security deposit, no forwarding address. The storage facility continues to operate normally. New customers come and go, renting units for perfectly ordinary reasons, storing perfectly ordinary possessions. The staff remains helpful and professional, always willing to assist with any questions or concerns. They've never heard of Unit 47, never encountered any problems with their numbering system, never had any complaints about strange smells or unusual contents. But I still have the key. It sits on my desk now, a small piece of metal that shouldn't exist, stamped with a number that belongs to nowhere. Sometimes I hold it up to the light and imagine I can see traces of that chemical smell still clinging to its surface. Sometimes I think about returning to the facility one more time, walking those corridors until I find the door that matches this key. The truth is probably simpler than I want to believe. Memory plays tricks, especially under stress. Security systems malfunction, records get lost, people move away without saying goodbye. The mind creates patterns where none exist, finds connections between unrelated events, transforms coincidence into conspiracy. Yet the key remains real in my hand, solid and undeniable. The woman in the yellow sundress remains missing from her apartment. And somewhere in this city, there might be others who have encountered impossible storage units filled with impossible things, others who have been told they're mistaken about what they've seen, others who carry keys to doors that shouldn't exist. The chemical smell fades a little more each day, but it never disappears completely. Crime 3, I clean homes part-time. Got a new client through a vague referral, no details, just an address and cash up front. I drove out and found the property tucked between two empty lots. Inside, everything was immaculate, too immaculate. Every object had a twin, 2 identical mugs, 2 chairs, 2 toothbrushes, mirror images down to the dust patterns. I started cleaning anyway. Then I noticed one of the toothbrushes was wet. The bed was warm. Someone had just been there. I tried to leave, but the front door wouldn't open. I heard footsteps upstairs, but every room was empty. I wasn't alone, but no one ever appeared. That was 6 months ago. I keep coming back to that house, not to clean, but to understand. The case file sits on my kitchen table now, pages scattered like fallen leaves. I became obsessed after filing the missing person report that no one seemed to care about. A woman had vanished from that address. The police said there was no evidence of foul play. They said the house had been empty for years. But I touched that warm bed. I heard those footsteps. The property records led me down a rabbit hole of shell companies and fake names. The deed changed hands 17 times in 5 years. Each owner existed only on paper, social security numbers that traced back to deceased individuals, addresses that led to vacant lots. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to hide who really owned that house. I started visiting the neighbors, what few there were in that isolated stretch of suburban wasteland. The woman next door, elderly with hands that shook when she poured tea, told me about the sounds. Always between dusk and dawn, she said. Cars pulling into the driveway, doors slamming, muffled conversations. But when she looked out her window, nothing, just an empty house with all the lights off. The mailman remembered delivering packages there, heavy boxes, always addressed to different names. He'd leave them on the porch and they'd be gone within hours. When I asked him to describe the recipients, his face went blank. He couldn't remember ever seeing anyone collect the mail. I found the real estate agent who'd supposedly shown the house to renters over the years. She was nervous, kept glancing at her phone, fingers drumming against her desk. She insisted she'd never been to that address. Her records showed otherwise. 17 separate rental agreements, all signed in her name, all with tenants who paid cash and left no forwarding information. When I pressed her about the duplicate items, her skin went pale. She'd noticed it too, she admitted. Every staged house had twin objects, but this one was different. The duplicates weren't for show, they were lived in. Both beds slept in, both toothbrushes used, both coffee mugs stained with the same shade of lipstick. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A therapist's office across town had been burglarized 6 months before I first entered that house. Only one thing was stolen: patient files for individuals undergoing identity dissociation therapy. The police report mentioned 43 files missing, all patients who'd been working through severe trauma-induced personality disorders. I recognized one of the names from the property records. The therapist, bound by confidentiality even after the theft, could only hint at the truth. Her patients had been exploring something called mirror therapy, confronting their fractured selves by literally living as both versions of their identity. She'd recommended several had discontinued treatment prematurely, against medical advice. Some had become obsessed with the concept of dual existence. The house wasn't just empty, it was a stage. I returned one final time, bringing 2 identical keys I had made from impressions of the original. The front door opened easily this time. Inside, the duplicates had multiplied. 2 became 4, became 8. The entire house now existed in perfect multiples, as if someone had been practicing being more than one person. In the basement, I found the recording equipment. Hours of audio files, all conversations between the same voice talking to itself. Different names, different personalities, but the same vocal patterns. The same person living as twins in a house that legally didn't exist. The recordings revealed the truth in fragments, a woman trying to escape something or someone. She'd created this elaborate fiction, this parallel existence, as a way to disappear while staying hidden in plain sight. The house was her chrysalis, a place to practice being someone else entirely. But the recordings grew increasingly disturbed. The 2 personalities began to conflict, to argue, to threaten each other. The final entry, dated the same day I'd first cleaned the house, was mostly silence punctuated by sobbing and the sound of someone packing in a hurry. I never found out what she was running from. The house was demolished 2 weeks after I filed my final report. The lot remains empty, overgrown with weeds that grow in strange patterns, 2 distinct types of vegetation, as if even the earth remembers the duality that once lived there. Sometimes I wonder if I cleaned that house at all, or if I was just another recording, another voice in the basement files. The cash I was paid was real enough, but so were those warm beds and wet toothbrushes. The missing person case remains open. Officially, no one ever lived at that address. Officially, I was never hired to clean a house that didn't exist. But I keep the key, just in case she comes back to finish whatever she started in that basement, talking to herself in two voices, practicing being someone else entirely. Crime 4, I don't get much mail, so when a thick envelope with no return address appeared, I opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter, dozens of pages long. It described a murder in graphic detail, but it wasn't just storytelling. It included dates, locations, and personal notes about the victim's habits. I thought it was fiction until I Googled a phrase from the third page. It led me to a missing persons case from years ago. The details matched perfectly. Then I reached the last page. It ended with a note, "You were the only witness. I hope this jogs your memory. I don't remember anything." The paper felt heavy between my fingers, yellowed at the edges like it had been stored somewhere damp. The handwriting was careful, deliberate. Someone had taken their time with this. Each letter formed with the precision of someone who wanted to be understood, who needed to be heard. I spread the pages across my kitchen table, the fluorescent light casting harsh shadows between them. The smell of old paper mixed with something else, something metallic that made my stomach turn. My coffee grew cold as I read through the confession again, this time slower, searching for something I might have missed. The writer knew things that never made it into news reports. They described the victim's morning routine, how she always checked her phone before getting out of bed, how she preferred her coffee black, how she hummed the same song while brushing her teeth. Details so intimate they could only come from someone who had been watching, waiting, learning her patterns. But it was the final pages that made my hands shake. The writer described my apartment building, the corner where I used to wait for the bus, even the jacket I wore that winter. They knew I had been there that morning, walking past the alley where it happened. They knew I had heard something that made me stop, turn my head, then continue walking because I convinced myself it was nothing. I reached for my phone, then hesitated. Who do you call when someone claims you witnessed a murder you don't remember? The police would want proof, and all I had was a letter from someone who could be delusional, manipulative, or worse. Instead, I found myself at my laptop, diving deeper into the missing persons case. Her name was redacted in most articles, but her photograph stared back at me from the screen, young, hopeful, with eyes that seemed familiar in a way that made my chest tight. I had seen her before, I was certain of it, but the memory remained just out of reach, like trying to hold water in cupped hands. The investigation had gone cold within months. No witnesses, no significant leads, no evidence of foul play despite the suspicious circumstances. She had simply vanished on her way to work, leaving behind a life that seemed perfectly ordinary until it wasn't. I called my sister that evening, casually asking if she remembered anything unusual about that winter, if I had seemed different or distracted. Her voice carried concern as she asked why I was bringing up such old memories. I told her I was just curious, but she knew me too well to believe such a simple explanation. After hanging up, I sat in my living room as darkness crept through the windows. The letter lay open on the coffee table before me, its pages catching the dim light from the street lamp outside. The writer had included a phone number at the bottom of the last page, written in the same careful script as the rest of the confession. My finger traced the digits, memorizing them without meaning to. Part of me wanted to call, to demand answers, to understand why someone would send such a thing. But another part of me, a part that grew stronger as the night wore on, wondered if I really wanted to know what I might have forgotten. The human mind has ways of protecting itself, of burying memories too painful or traumatic to process. Perhaps there was a reason I couldn't remember that morning, a reason my subconscious had chosen to lock away whatever I had witnessed in that alley. I folded the letter carefully, placing it back in its envelope, but sleep wouldn't come that night or the nights that followed. Every shadow outside my window seemed to hold a figure watching, waiting. Every unexpected sound made me question whether someone was trying to help me remember or ensure that I never would. The phone number remained undialed, but its presence haunted me. Somewhere out there, someone knew the truth about what happened to that woman, about what I had seen, about why my memory had chosen to protect me from something too terrible to recall. And they were waiting for me to remember. Crime 5, while watching a true crime documentary, I noticed something odd. The victim's apartment looked just like mine, same furniture layout, same wallpaper, even the same chipped tile in the bathroom. I paused the screen and checked every detail, identical, but the documentary was about an unsolved case in another state. I looked up the production company and emailed them. No reply. The next day I got a package. Inside was a burned DVD and a sticky note with an address, mine. The DVD played footage of me sleeping, filmed from the ceiling. My face was circled in red. The footage was grainy but clear enough. I could see myself tossing in bed, completely unaware. The timestamp showed it was recorded 3 weeks ago, while I was recovering from that strange flu that kept me unconscious for days. My hands trembled as I ejected the disc. The plastic felt warm against my fingertips, as if it had been recently handled. I rewound the documentary and took screenshots of the victim's apartment. Every angle matched mine perfectly. The coffee stain on the carpet near the window, the scratch on the wooden table where I'd carelessly dragged a heavy box, even the way the bathroom door hung slightly crooked. These weren't coincidences, these were impossibilities. The victim's name was never mentioned in the documentary, only referred to as the young professional. She lived alone, worked from home, rarely had visitors. The parallels made my skin crawl. I called the detective mentioned in the credits. He sounded tired when he answered, like he'd been expecting this call. "You're not the first person to contact me about similarities," he said. His voice carried the weight of someone who'd seen too much. "But you're the first to mention the exact apartment layout." I described everything, the furniture placement, the wallpaper pattern, the chipped tile. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that I wondered if he'd hung up. "Can you come down to the station? Bring that DVD." The detective's office smelled like stale coffee and old paper. He studied the disc with latex gloves, holding it up to the fluorescent light. His partner, a woman with sharp eyes, watched me intently as I repeated my story. "The production company went out of business last month," she said. "Suddenly, no forwarding address, no contact information. We've been trying to track them down since the documentary aired." They showed me the case file. The victim had disappeared on a Thursday. Her apartment was found exactly as shown in the documentary, undisturbed, no signs of struggle, no forced entry, just gone, like she'd simply evaporated. "What's strange," the detective continued, "is that 3 other people have called about apartment similarities. All different states, all with the same basic layout and furnishings. It's like someone was replicating the same living space over and over." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. I pulled my jacket tighter around my shoulders. Were they all living alone, working from home? The detectives exchanged glances. Yes, and they all reported feeling watched before they called us. I thought about the past few weeks, the feeling of being observed that I'd attributed to paranoia, the way my neighbors had started avoiding eye contact, the strange calls that hung up when I answered. They gave me their cards and advised me to stay vigilant. I drove home through empty streets, checking my rearview mirror constantly. My apartment building looked different somehow, more isolated than before. Inside, I examined every corner with new eyes. The furniture arrangement that I'd thought was my own design now felt staged, deliberate. I found myself questioning every purchasing decision I'd made. Had I really chosen this couch, or had someone influenced me? The wallpaper I'd loved now seemed oppressive, closing in around me. I searched through old emails and found correspondence with a furniture rental company I didn't remember contacting. The arrangements had been made months ago, around the time I'd moved in. The rental agreement showed a corporate account paying for everything. When I called the number, it was disconnected. My lease agreement revealed another anomaly. The property management company had changed names twice since I'd signed. Each time, the new company had contacted me about updating my information for security purposes. I'd provided details about my work schedule, living habits, even my sleeping patterns under the guise of a lifestyle survey. The surveillance footage from my building's lobby showed something disturbing. Multiple people had accessed my apartment during the day when I was supposed to be at work. The timestamp indicated I'd been home sick, heavily medicated, and unconscious. The figures entering and leaving were too blurry to identify, but they moved with purpose, carrying equipment. I installed my own security cameras that night. The next morning they were gone, not stolen, simply absent as if they'd never existed. The store receipt was still in my wallet, but when I called the electronics shop, they claimed to have no record of the purchase. The paranoia became consuming. I started documenting everything, taking photos of my apartment state before leaving, timing my daily routines, keeping detailed logs of unusual events. The documentation revealed patterns I hadn't noticed, objects moving slightly between photographs, food disappearing from my refrigerator in quantities too small to notice day by day. I reached out to the other people who'd contacted the police about apartment similarities. 2 didn't respond. The third, a woman, agreed to meet at a public place. She looked exhausted, constantly glancing over her shoulder. "They moved me out," she whispered across the coffee shop table. "Told me the building had structural issues, but I drove by last week. Someone else is living there now. The apartment looks exactly the same through the windows." She slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were photographs of her old apartment and documents showing the same property management companies, the same furniture rental arrangements, the same lifestyle surveys. "I think we're part of something bigger," she said, "like an experiment or a rehearsal." Before I could ask what she meant, she stood abruptly and left. I never saw her again. When I tried to contact her through the number she'd given me, it was disconnected. Back home, I found a new letter slipped under my door. No postmark, no return address. Inside was a single photograph of the crime scene victim's apartment, but with one crucial difference: I was visible in the background, standing in the doorway like I belonged there. I don't remember being photographed in that apartment. I don't remember visiting any apartment that looked like mine. But there I was, captured in a moment I couldn't recall, in a place I'd never consciously been. The police couldn't explain the photograph. The detectives seemed less interested in my case now, their attention focused elsewhere. When I pressed them for updates, they became evasive, suggesting I might benefit from speaking with a counselor about stress and false memories. I stopped sleeping in my bedroom. The ceiling felt too exposed, too vulnerable. Instead, I stayed on the couch, facing the door, waiting for something I couldn't name. The silence in the apartment grew heavier each night, broken only by the settling sounds of a building that seemed to be watching me back. The documentary had been removed from all streaming platforms. The production company's website disappeared overnight. Even my original email inquiry vanished from my sent folder, as if the digital conversation had never existed. Sometimes I catch my reflection in the bathroom mirror and wonder if I'm looking at the victim or the next target. The chip tile near my feet seems to pulse in my peripheral vision, a reminder that this space might not be mine at all. I still live here in this apartment that mirrors a crime scene. I still follow the same routines, sleep in the same bed, eat the same foods. But now I know I'm not alone in this space. I can feel the presence of others who have lived this same life, made these same choices, followed these same patterns. The question that haunts me isn't whether I'll disappear like the others. It's whether I already have and just haven't realized it yet. Crime 6, I hadn't had visitors. My doors were locked, my windows secure. But that morning when I made my bed, I felt a hard shape under my pillow. It was a brass key, old and tarnished. Attached was a tag with an address I didn't recognize. I thought it was some kind of mistake, but curiosity got the better of me. I drove to the location. It led to an abandoned motel on the outskirts of town. Room 9, the key fit. Inside was a cot, a duffel bag, and a single photo of me, taken at a gas station 3 years ago. I never saw that camera. The photo was grainy, clearly taken from a distance. I stood frozen, studying my own face captured in that mundane moment, filling my tank, completely unaware. The timestamp on the bottom right corner showed a date I remembered well. It was the day I'd driven across state lines to start fresh after the divorce. Nobody knew about that trip. I'd paid cash for everything, avoided my usual routes, yet someone had been watching. I set the photo down with trembling fingers and examined the duffel bag. It smelled of stale cigarettes and something else, a cologne I couldn't place, but that seemed familiar. Inside were more photographs, dozens of them. Me leaving work, me at the grocery store, me walking my dog, all taken over the past 2 years. Some were so close I could see the exhaustion in my eyes, the way I'd started looking over my shoulder without realizing it. At the bottom of the bag, wrapped in plastic, was a notebook. The handwriting was careful, methodical. It documented my routines with disturbing precision. My usual lunch spot, the pharmacy I visited, the park where I jogged, but what made my skin crawl were the personal details scattered throughout the pages. My ex-husband's new address, my sister's phone number, the name of my therapist. There was something else, receipts, dozens of them, all from places I'd been, coffee shops, bookstores, restaurants, but these weren't my receipts. Someone had been following me so closely they'd purchased items at the same locations, sometimes within minutes of my own visits. I found a receipt from the hardware store dated the same day I'd bought new locks for my house. The timestamp showed a purchase made 20 minutes after mine, door hinges and screws. My hands shook as I flipped through more pages. There were notes about my behavior, almost clinical in their observation. Subject appears agitated today, changed walking route, new security system installed, motion sensors visible from street. Relationship with neighbor seems strained, opportunity present. The word opportunity appeared frequently, always underlined. I found floor plans of my house sketched with surprising accuracy. They knew about the loose window in my bedroom, the broken latch on the back gate, even the spare key I kept under the flower pot. But that key had been moved last month. I'd hidden it somewhere new after feeling watched. Clearly, it hadn't mattered. Near the end of the notebook, the entries became more personal, more disturbing. Subject has nightmares, light stays on until dawn. Therapy appointments increased to twice weekly. Sister called, subject declined dinner invitation. These weren't just observations anymore. They were intimate details of my unraveling mental state. I found a letter addressed to me, never sent. The handwriting matched the notebook. It spoke of protection, of watching over me, of keeping me safe from unnamed threats. But the tone felt possessive, obsessive. The writer claimed to know about dangers I couldn't see, people who meant me harm. They positioned themselves as my guardian, my secret protector. The letter ended with a promise that they would always be near, always watching, always ready to act when necessary. A manila envelope contained documents I'd never seen before. Copies of my medical records, bank statements, employment history. Someone had accessed information that should have been private, secure. There were notes in the margins, questions about my prescriptions, my spending habits, my work schedule. It felt like my entire life had been dissected by a stranger. I discovered recordings, small digital devices labeled with dates and locations. I played one from last month. It was my voice, a phone conversation with my sister about feeling unsafe, about considering moving away. The audio was crystal clear. They'd been close enough to record my private conversations. How many times had they been in my house while I slept? The final item in the bag was a map of the surrounding area. Red pins marked locations I recognized, my house, my office, my regular haunts. But there were other pins in places I'd never been. Remote locations outside town, abandoned buildings, construction sites. Each pin had a number written beside it. I couldn't decipher the system, but something about those unmarked locations filled me with dread. I sat on the motel bed, surrounded by evidence of a surveillance campaign that had lasted years. Someone had dedicated enormous time and resources to watching me, learning me, documenting my existence. But why? I wasn't important. I wasn't wealthy or famous. I lived a quiet, unremarkable life. What could anyone possibly want from me? Then I noticed something that made my blood freeze. In the corner of one photograph, barely visible, was a reflection in a store window. Not me, someone else. A figure in dark clothing, camera raised, but what terrified me wasn't the stalker. It was the person standing next to them, partially obscured but unmistakable. Someone I knew, someone I trusted, someone who had keys to my house. I grabbed everything and ran to my car. The drive home passed in a blur of paranoia and confusion. Every car seemed to be following me. Every face looked suspicious. By the time I reached my neighborhood, I was hyperventilating. I sat in my driveway, staring at my house, wondering who else might have keys, who else might know my secrets. Inside, I double-checked every lock, every window, but the damage was done. I knew now that privacy was an illusion. Someone had been intimate with my life for years, closer than family, more observant than friends. They knew things about me I didn't know about myself, and they were still out there, still watching, still waiting for the next opportunity. The worst part wasn't just being watched, it was realizing that my instincts had been right all along. The feeling of being followed, the sense that someone was in my house while I was away, the paranoia I'd been treating with therapy and medication, it had all been real. I wasn't losing my mind. Someone really had been there in the shadows, documenting my descent into fear. I never found out who left that key under my pillow. The motel had no records of recent guests. The room had been abandoned for months, but sometimes, lying awake at night, I wonder if they're still out there, still watching, still collecting evidence of my unraveling, still waiting for the perfect opportunity to reveal themselves completely. The key sits on my nightstand now. I keep it there as a reminder that some doors should never be opened, some truths too dangerous to uncover, because knowing you're being watched is one thing, but discovering you might have been complicit in your own surveillance, that's a possibility I'm not ready to face. Crime 7, my new apartment came with outdated appliances. One day I moved the fridge to clean behind it. The wall looked wrong, off texture, off color. I knocked, hollow. I found a seam. It opened to a narrow stairwell, spiraling down into the dark. No lights, just concrete. I brought a flashlight and descended. At the bottom was a room, barren except for a desk and piles of cassette tapes. Each was labeled with a number and initials. I played one. It was surveillance audio. Heavy breathing, muffled voices, begging. The last tape had my initials. I never hit play. That was 3 weeks ago. The door is still there, sealed behind the fridge I pushed back into place. But the tapes are here with me now, stacked beside my bed like a monument to something I cannot name. I should have called the police immediately. I know that now. But something in those first recordings froze me in place, made me listen deeper, made me need to understand before I could act. The voices were so clear, so intimate, like confessions whispered in the dark. The desk down there was covered in dust, but the chair showed recent use. Someone had been sitting there regularly, organizing these recordings. The labels were written in different handwriting styles, as if multiple people had contributed over the years. Some tapes were brittle with age, others looked freshly recorded. I started with the oldest ones. The earliest recordings contained conversations between two people discussing mundane things, grocery lists, work schedules, family obligations, normal life captured without consent. But as I progressed through the collection, the content shifted. Arguments between neighbors, phone calls about money troubles, private moments that should never have been documented. The apartment building manager, a woman with silver hair and tired eyes, told me the previous tenant had lived here for 15 years. A quiet man who kept to himself, she said, never caused any trouble. Moved out suddenly one night, leaving most of his belongings behind. She seemed nervous when I asked about him, her fingers fidgeting with her keychain. I found his lease agreement tucked inside the desk drawer. His signature was careful, deliberate, the same handwriting that appeared on the newer tape labels. But other signatures were there too, different people who had signed witness statements or property damage reports over the years. Their handwriting matched the older labels perfectly. Each tape revealed another layer of violation: bedroom conversations, therapy sessions, children playing in hallways, their innocent voices preserved forever without their knowledge. The recordings spanned decades, suggesting this wasn't the work of one person but an entire system of surveillance that had been passed down or shared. I contacted the building's previous management company, claiming I needed information about utility installations. The woman on the phone was helpful until I mentioned the address. Then her voice changed, became guarded. She told me all records from that property had been sealed due to ongoing legal matters. When I pressed for details, she hung up. The local library had newspaper archives going back 30 years. I spent entire afternoons searching for any mention of the building, any hint of what might have happened here. I found 3 small articles about noise complaints, 2 about break-ins, and 1 about a missing person investigation that had gone cold. The missing person had lived 2 floors below me. In the basement room behind the desk, I discovered a small hole drilled through the concrete wall. It led to the building's ventilation system. The hole was just wide enough for a microphone cord. Someone had been recording not just from the hidden room, but from inside the walls themselves, listening to every apartment, every conversation, every private moment. The maintenance records showed unusual electrical work done throughout the building over the past decade. Rewiring projects that seemed unnecessary, installations that didn't match any standard building codes. When I compared these dates to the timestamps on some of the newer recordings, the correlation was undeniable. I started recognizing voices. The woman from the third floor who always smiled in the hallway. The young man who worked irregular hours and kept his blinds drawn. The elderly couple who argued about medication and doctor visits. They were all there, captured in their most vulnerable moments, archived like specimens in someone's twisted collection. The tape with my initials haunts me most. It sits on my nightstand, unmarked except for 2 letters that spell out my name. The weight of it feels heavier than the others, as if it contains something more concentrated, more personal. Sometimes I pick it up, feeling its smooth plastic surface, wondering what version of myself is trapped inside. I've played portions of other tapes to verify their authenticity. The audio quality is too good to be accidental recordings. Professional equipment was used, expensive microphones, sound editing software. This wasn't amateur voyeurism, but something more organized, more deliberate. The police would want to hear that tape. They would want to analyze the entire collection, trace the equipment, investigate the previous tenants. But once I hand over that evidence, I lose control of what happens next. Once they know what I found, they'll know what I heard, what I became complicit in by listening. Last week I noticed someone had been in my apartment while I was at work. Nothing was missing, but small things were moved. A book left open to a different page. A coffee mug placed in the sink that I remembered leaving on a counter. The fridge had been pulled away from the wall again, just slightly, as if someone wanted to check that the door was still sealed. The building feels different now, like it's watching me. Every creak in the walls, every footstep in the hallway above, every conversation that drifts through the thin walls, I wonder if it's being recorded, if somewhere in the dark, someone is still listening. I keep the tapes with me because I don't trust them to stay safe anywhere else, but I also keep them because they represent something bigger than just privacy violations. They're evidence of a system that turned ordinary people into unwitting performers in someone else's collection of human secrets. The tape with my initials grows heavier each day. Whatever it contains was recorded before I moved here, which means someone was planning for my arrival, preparing for my voice to join their archive. The thought that I was expected, that my presence here was orchestrated, makes me question everything about how I found this place. Tonight I'll put the tapes back where I found them. I'll seal the door and move the fridge into place, but I won't call the police, not yet. Because I'm starting to suspect that the person who recorded all those voices, who violated all that trust, who turned this building into their personal surveillance system, might still be here. And they're still listening. Crime 8, I was walking downtown when I noticed a flyer stapled to a pole. Missing, it read, black and white photo, my face. It wasn't a look-alike, it was me down to the scar on my eyebrow. The details below were vague, but the poster claimed I disappeared after attending a specific event. When I never went to, I tore the flyer down, heart pounding. The next day it was posted again. This time there were more, on my mailbox, on my car. I tried to show someone, but by the time I returned, every flyer was gone, every trace erased, except the one taped to my mirror. The paper felt rough between my fingers, cheaper than standard printer stock. I held it up to the light, searching for watermarks or any identifying features. The photograph was definitely mine, but it had been altered. The background was different. In the original, I was standing in my kitchen, but here I appeared to be in what looked like a parking garage. The lighting was all wrong, casting shadows that didn't match my memory of when that photo was taken. I called the number listed at the bottom. A woman answered, her voice strained and hollow. She claimed to be my sister. I don't have a sister. When I told her this, she became quiet. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Finally, she whispered that she'd been looking for me for months, that our family was worried sick. She described a version of my life I didn't recognize. A job I never held, friends I never met, places I never lived. The conversation ended abruptly when she mentioned a birthmark on my shoulder. The exact location, the exact shape, details only someone who had seen me undressed would know. I hung up, my hands trembling. I checked my shoulder in the bathroom mirror. The birthmark was there, just as she described. I started keeping a journal documenting every strange occurrence. The flyers appeared in impossible places. Inside my locked car, slipped under my apartment door, tucked into books at the library I frequent. Each time I'd photograph them before they vanished. But when I reviewed the photos, they showed blank walls, empty spaces where the posters should have been. My neighbor, an elderly man who spends his days watching the street from his window, approached me one morning. He asked if I was feeling better, if I was settling back in okay. When I looked confused, he explained that he'd seen the missing person flyers around the neighborhood. He was glad I'd been found safe. He remembered when I'd disappeared, how my family had canvassed the area, asking questions, distributing photos. But I never disappeared. I was here the whole time. I showed him my calendar, my receipts, my work attendance records. He studied them carefully, his brow furrowed. He admitted the dates didn't match what he remembered, but his confusion seemed genuine. He wasn't lying. He truly believed I had been missing. I decided to visit the location mentioned in the flyer, the place where I supposedly disappeared. It was a community center across town, hosting support groups and social events. The coordinator, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, recognized me immediately. She said I'd been attending their grief counseling sessions regularly before I stopped showing up. She had my intake forms, my emergency contact information, my signature on attendance sheets. The handwriting looked like mine, but I'd never been to grief counseling. I'd never lost anyone close enough to warrant such sessions. She showed me the forms, and I saw my name written in my own hand, describing the loss of someone I'd never known. The details were specific, heartbreaking. The grief felt real, even though the person never existed in my life. I asked to see the security footage from the last session I supposedly attended. The cameras had malfunctioned that day, she explained. The only evidence of my presence was the sign-in sheet and the empty chair where I used to sit. Other group members remembered me, remembered my stories, my tears. They described conversations we'd never had, moments of connection I couldn't recall. The deeper I dug, the more fractured my reality became. Bank records showed transactions I didn't remember making. Store clerks recognized me from purchases I never made. My phone contained photos I didn't take, messages I didn't send. But the metadata was correct. The timestamps aligned with my known whereabouts. It was as if I'd been living two lives simultaneously, one of which I had no memory of. I hired a private investigator, a woman with decades of experience in missing persons cases. She listened to my story without judgment, taking notes with practiced efficiency. Her investigation revealed something that made my blood run cold. The missing person case was real. I had been reported missing by a family that shared my last name, people who claimed to know intimate details about my life. But when she tried to contact them, the phone numbers were disconnected. The addresses led to vacant lots. The most disturbing discovery came when she accessed medical records. There was a gap in my health insurance coverage, a period where I apparently had no medical care. But during that same time, someone using my identity had been receiving psychiatric treatment at a facility in another state. The sessions were for dissociative episodes, memory loss, and identity confusion. The handwriting in the patient files matched mine perfectly. I confronted the psychiatrist who had treated this other version of me. She remembered our sessions vividly, describing breakthrough moments and setbacks in my treatment. She had notes detailing my progress, my struggles with accepting a traumatic event that had shattered my sense of self. According to her records, I had made significant progress before abruptly stopping treatment and disappearing. The trauma she described involved witnessing something terrible, something that my mind had locked away so completely that I'd created an alternate reality to cope. She showed me session notes where I described the same scar on my eyebrow, the same birthmark, the same fears and hopes. But the person in her notes was running from something, hiding from people who meant to harm him. I left her office with more questions than answers. The evidence was overwhelming, yet impossible to reconcile with my memories. Either I was living a carefully constructed delusion, or someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to create an elaborate fiction about my life. Both possibilities terrified me equally. The flyers stopped appearing after that meeting. The mysterious phone calls ceased. The people who claimed to know me vanished as suddenly as they had appeared. I was left with only the physical evidence of my investigation and the growing certainty that I might not be who I thought I was. I still checked my reflection every morning, looking for signs of the person described in those missing posters. Sometimes I catch glimpses of him in my peripheral vision, a shadow of someone I might have been or might still be. The journal I kept during my investigation remains locked in my desk drawer. I've never opened it since that last entry, afraid of what I might find written in my own handwriting. The poster taped to my mirror is still there. I can't bring myself to remove it. It serves as a reminder that somewhere, someone is looking for me. Or perhaps someone is looking for the person I used to be before I became whoever I am now. The distinction grows blurrier each day, and I'm no longer certain which version of the truth I'm more afraid to discover. Crime 9, I was helping a friend move and stumbled on a box of old files, documents from a closed investigation. I skimmed through, curious, until I hit a page that made my stomach drop. It was an official report labeled Witness Statement, my name. I'd never been part of an investigation. The testimony described a scene I recognized, a gas station, a missing clerk, a body in the freezer. The problem, the date listed was a month from now. I confronted my friend, but he swore he'd never seen the file. I took it home. That night I found a note under my door. Your memory isn't the problem. The paper felt different between my fingers the next morning, heavier somehow. I read the statement again, word by word. The handwriting was mine. I recognized the way I formed the letter G, the slight slant of my signature at the bottom. But I had no memory of writing those words, of being in that gas station, of seeing what the report claimed I'd witnessed. The clerk's name was redacted with thick black ink, but other details remained clear. A convenience store on the corner of two busy streets, fluorescent lights that flickered, the smell of stale coffee and disinfectant, a freezer door left slightly ajar. These weren't random details, they felt like memories trying to surface through fog. I drove to the gas station mentioned in the coordinates listed in the file. The building stood exactly as described, down to the cracked concrete and the faded paint on the walls. The same fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The same smell hit me when I walked through the automatic doors. My hands began to shake as I approached the counter. The current clerk, a woman with tired eyes and graying hair, looked up from her magazine. I asked about the previous employee, the one who'd worked here before her. She studied my face for a long moment before speaking. She told me about him, how he'd simply stopped showing up for work. No explanation, no final paycheck collected, just gone. Her voice dropped to a whisper when she mentioned the freezer. how it had been making strange noises for weeks before he disappeared, how the repair technician had found it unplugged one morning, the lock broken from the inside, but when they opened it, they found nothing unusual, just spoiled food and condensation. I asked to see the freezer. She hesitated, then led me to the back room. The metal door stood closed, a new padlock securing it. She explained that the owner had installed it after the incident, said it was for safety reasons. The lock looked fresh, but the scratches around the handle were old, deep grooves that suggested someone had tried desperately to open it from within. That night I called the police station. The detective who answered recognized my name immediately. He said I'd been very helpful during the investigation, very cooperative. He thanked me again for coming forward. When I told him I didn't remember giving any statement, the line went quiet. He asked if I was feeling all right, if I'd been under stress lately. He suggested I might want to talk to someone professional. I hung up and returned to the file. Buried deeper in the stack, I found photographs, crime scene images showing the gas station exactly as I'd seen it that day. The freezer door ajar, dark stains on the concrete floor, and in one photo, barely visible in the background, a reflection in the security monitor, a figure standing near the freezer, watching. The reflection looked like me. I studied the image under a magnifying glass, searching for any detail that might prove it wasn't me. But the height matched, the build was right, even the jacket looked familiar. I went to my closet and found it hanging there, the same jacket, with a small tear near the left pocket that was visible in the photograph. The next morning I found another note. This time it was slipped under my windshield wiper. The handwriting was different, more careful, deliberate. It contained an address and a single word, remember. The address led to a small apartment building across town. The door was unlocked. Inside, the walls were covered with newspaper clippings, photographs, and documents, all related to the missing clerk. Pictures of him with friends, family, coworkers, his work schedule, his last known movements, and in the center of it all, a timeline that ended abruptly on the date of my supposed witness statement. On the table sat a tape recorder, old and worn. I pressed play. My own voice filled the room, describing that night in detail. I spoke about seeing the clerk's car in the parking lot after closing time, about the lights being on when they should have been off, about the freezer door and what I'd found inside. But as I listened, something felt wrong. The cadence of my speech was different, more measured. The words came too easily, as if I were reading from a script. And there were pauses, gaps where other voices had been edited out, someone asking questions, someone guiding my responses. I fast-forwarded through the tape. Near the end, I heard something that made my blood freeze. A second voice, barely audible, coaching me on what to say. The voice belonged to my friend, the one who'd claimed he'd never seen the file. The walls of the apartment seemed to close in as I realized what had happened. The missing clerk hadn't disappeared. He'd been eliminated, and I'd been there not as a witness, but as something else entirely. The gaps in my memory weren't random, they were intentional. I found a prescription bottle in the apartment's bathroom. Sleep medication prescribed to me, but I'd never taken sleeping pills. The dates on the prescription covered the weeks leading up to the incident. Enough pills to keep someone compliant, suggestible, easy to manipulate. The truth settled over me like ice water. I hadn't witnessed a crime, I'd been used to cover one up. My friend, the detective, possibly others, had orchestrated the whole thing. They drugged me, brought me to the scene, made me complicit in their lie. The future date on the file wasn't a mistake, it was a reminder, a warning of what was still to come. I left the apartment and drove home, the weight of understanding crushing down on me. My phone buzzed with a text from my friend asking if I wanted to grab dinner. His message was cheerful, normal, as if nothing had changed, but I knew better now. The final note was waiting on my kitchen table when I arrived. The handwriting was mine this time, but I had no memory of writing it. It contained only one line: "You can't run from what you've already done." I sit here now staring at that note, knowing that the truth is both simpler and more complex than I'd imagined. The missing clerk is gone, and I played a role in his disappearance. But the exact nature of that role remains hidden, locked away in the gaps of my memory. Tomorrow I'll wake up and try to piece together more of what happened. I'll search for more evidence, more clues, more answers. But deep down, I know that some truths are too dangerous to remember. Some memories are erased for a reason. The case file sits open on my desk, my name printed clearly on the witness statement. In 1 month, I'll be there again at that gas station, playing my part in a story that's already been written. The only question is whether I'll be a witness or something else entirely. The fluorescent lights in my kitchen flicker overhead, casting shadows that move when they shouldn't. And somewhere in the distance, I can hear the hum of a freezer door, slightly ajar, waiting for me to return. Story 10. The town never spoke of the house on the edge of the woods. It stood solitary, its windows darkened, porch weighed down by time. No one laid claim to it. No memory existed of its builder. But when a band of trekkers strayed too near, they beheld an oddity names etched into the wooden walls, carved deep like omens. At the base of the list, fresh and untouched, lay a name unfamiliar to all, until a whisper broke the stillness: "That name is mine." The call arrived under the veil of night. Dispatch logged it as a routine trespassing incident. The voice belonged to Mason Wright, the leader among the hikers who stumbled upon his name etched into the forsaken dwelling. Responding officers anticipated mere mischief, perhaps a jest among companions. Yet, what awaited them defied rationale. Detective Sarah Keller reached the scene as twilight descended upon the forest. Her flashlight pierced the darkness, revealing the worn face of the structure. The names 27 in all ran vertically down the eastern wall. Some had faded with age, nearly indistinguishable against the weathered wood. Others remained crisp, as if freshly carved. And at the end, Mason Wright, the incision still redolent of sawdust. "I've never set foot here before," Mason asserted, his breath materializing in the cold air. "I cannot fathom how my name came to be known." The inquiry commenced with checks on each listed name. The findings sent shivers through the detective team. Every name corresponded to a missing person from the past 4 decades. Some cases had grown cold, others remained active. Yet all shared a chilling detail: the individuals had vanished while hiking alone. Forensic experts photographed each inscription, documenting the depths, techniques, and weathering. The oldest name, Rebecca Hansen, aligned with a missing persons case from 37 years prior. The records recounted a young woman who ventured into those woods, never to return. Search parties uncovered naught but a lone hiking boot by a stream. Detective Keller extensively interviewed Mason. His account remained unwavering. He bore no ties to the area beyond that hiking excursion with 4 college friends. Their trail was chosen at random, guided by an online suggestion. Nothing in his background linked him to the other names on the wall. Attention turned to Mason's companions. Emily Chen, the group's photographer, provided images captured during their hike. Upon scrutiny, analysts discerned a disquieting presence: a blurred figure lurking in the background of 3 photos. A tall, slender silhouette, always obscured by foliage. "We encountered no one else on our path," Emily insisted. "We would have remembered." Detective Keller ordered a search of the house's interior. The structure seemed forsaken, dust blanketed every surface, furniture in disarray. Yet in the basement, a haunting revelation awaited. Personal effects of the missing hikers lay arranged on shelves: watches, backpacks, cameras, wallets, each labeled with a name from the exterior wall. Technicians meticulously cataloged every item. Beneath ultraviolet light, aged bloodstains emerged on the floor, signs of attempts at cleansing. Ground-penetrating radar unveiled no buried remains, yet cadaver dogs signaled near the densest part of the forest behind the house. As the probe deepened, Detective Keller observed peculiar behavior in Mason Wright. He reported eerie incidents, whispers outside his home, fresh footprints leading to his door but not away, shadowy figures observing from the street. An officer was assigned for his protection, yet Mason's paranoia escalated. A breakthrough arrived with the unearthing of land records from county archives. The house belonged to a recluse named Victor Blackwood, a hunter who vanished without a trace 15 years prior. Detective Keller secured a warrant to explore deeper into the woods. A team uncovered crude blinds strategically positioned along popular trails. Within one, a journal was found, chronicling meticulous observations, hiker descriptions, routes, equipment. The notes escalated from animal hunting techniques to humans as prey. The final entries detailed the stalking of each victim on the wall, along with elaborate selection methods. A manhunt for Blackwood unfolded across jurisdictions. Helicopters scoured the forest with thermal imaging. Tactical units combed caves and ravines, yet the suspect remained elusive. Mason Wright ceased communication. Officers arriving at his residence found it vacant, with a chilling message freshly carved on his bedroom wall: "The hunter becomes the hunted." The search for Mason extended for weeks without success. During a revisit to Blackwood's house, technicians made a ghastly discovery behind a concealed wall in the basement: a workshop with woodworking tools, preservatives, and a newly carved piece of wood bearing a name yet unmounted. It belonged to the head forensic technician who had processed the house initially, absent due to illness that day. Authorities established a vigilant perimeter around the house, deploying cameras and motion sensors. 3 nights later, sensors triggered an alert. Surveillance footage captured a figure emerging from the forest, impossibly tall, unnaturally thin. As tactical teams closed in, the cameras briefly lost signal. Upon restoration, the figure had vanished. The house remains under constant watch. Mason Wright and the forensic technician were never located. The investigation persists, with renewed efforts as similar disappearances are reported in wooded regions. The names on the wall have become a haunting legend among law enforcement. Some officers shun mention of them. Others steer clear of the case entirely. Local hikers steer clear of the house, fearful that discussing it may add their names to that dreadful list, the names unspoken. Story 11. She desired to redecorate the nursery before the new baby's arrival. The walls wore a faded blue hue, bearing the weight of untold tales within their layers. With each stroke of white paint, a secret emerged from beneath faint letters at first, then growing clearer and sharper, a message hidden beneath the surface. "Don't let it hear you," her breath hitched. Stepping back, she noticed something peculiar: tiny handprints in the fresh paint, too high for a child to reach. This discovery in the nursery of the Morgan house marked the genesis of what would later be known as the Whispering House case. The young couple had bought the Victorian-style home for a suspiciously low price, unaware of its dark past. Detective Sarah Klein arrived, notebook in hand, and pressed the doorbell. A woman, her pregnant belly prominent beneath paint-stained overalls, answered. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, evidence of sleepless nights. The detective observed the woman's trembling hands as she recounted finding the message and handprints. "The previous owners fled suddenly," the woman explained. Neighbors said they left in the dead of night, no moving truck, just essentials packed in their car. Walking through the historic residence, Detective Klein's steps echoed on aged floorboards. In the nursery, she scrutinized the half-painted wall, the message still visible where the painting had abruptly halted. Beside it, 5 small handprints imprinted in the wet paint at adult shoulder height. At the precinct, Detective Klein delved into the property's records. The house had changed owners 8 times in 3 decades, an unusually high turnover rate. Each family stayed less than 2 years. More unsettling were the child welfare reports linked to 3 of those families. Children spoke of whispers from the walls and feeling watched as they slept. The detective delved deeper, seeking construction records and historical archives. The house once belonged to Alina Blackwood, a wealthy widow who ran an orphanage on the premises. Newspaper clippings mentioned 5 children who vanished from her care, believed to have run away. Upon Alina's death, workers renovating the house uncovered a sealed room behind the nursery wall. Inside lay children's belongings, tiny shoes, toys, and clothing, but no bodies. The mystery remained unsolved, hidden away in dusty records. Interviewing former residents, Detective Klein pieced together a chilling narrative. Families with children reported strange incidents, toys moved overnight, laughter in empty halls, and crayon drawings appearing on walls. Most dismissed these as imagination until the ominous message surfaced. The handwriting was consistent: don't let them find you, don't make a sound, don't let it hear you, always uncovered during nursery repaintings. A forensic linguist matched the writing to Alina Blackwood's journals. The identical handprints, despite different children over the years, added to the enigma. The investigation took a dark turn when the detective obtained permission for ground-penetrating radar in the basement. Anomalies in the readings led to a startling discovery: 5 child-sized shapes beneath the concrete floor. Breaking through, workers unearthed a grim truth: 5 sets of remains arranged in a circle. Forensics revealed the children perished during Alina's tenure. Each child wore a pendant engraved with their name, the 5 missing orphans. Luminol revealed handprints all over the nursery walls, invisible to the naked eye, glowing in the darkness. Alina's journals unveiled her twisted beliefs, viewing orphaned children as sources of spiritual energy. The children had left warnings, hoping future occupants would learn the truth. The case concluded with a proper burial for the victims, their names finally recognized as murder victims. The house remained vacant, the pregnant couple refusing to return. Detective Klein closed the case, documenting luminol-lit handprints and the hidden message. Though justice prevailed, an inexplicable presence lingered in the house, reaching out through time and paint layers. The nursery walls were demolished, yet workers claimed to hear children's whispers amidst the debris. The house was condemned, a cold case sealed in a cabinet closure on the outside, unanswered questions within. A haunting photograph remained a reminder that some crimes leave indelible marks beyond the reach of fresh paint. Story 12. They stumbled upon it in the attic, concealed beneath a worn-out blanket. A porcelain doll, fragile and aged, with its wide blue eyes painted on, gazing unblinkingly. It was unfamiliar to both of them. Initially, they dismissed it as just another forgotten relic of the past. Yet as they settled in for the night, a peculiar unease settled upon them. The air grew dense, the silence lingering. And when morning arrived, the doll was no longer in the attic. It now sat solemnly at the foot of their bed. Sarah and Michael, a young couple, had acquired the Victorian house through an auction, captivated by its intricate woodwork and enigmatic allure, despite whispers of a troubled history. Little did they know they were about to become entwined in that very history. Detective Rachel Winters received the call on a crisp autumn morning. The female victim was discovered in the master bedroom, her body arranged in an unnatural stance, limbs bent at precise angles, eyes wide with terror. The male victim found in the hallway seemed to have been fleeing. The scene was pristine, no forced entry, no signs of struggle except for the haunting final moments. Delicately, Detective Winters observed, "The positioning is deliberate," as she murmured into her recorder, while crime scene photographers meticulously documented every detail. The female victim appears posed, akin to a doll taken from its display case. The investigation commenced with in-depth interviews of neighbors. An elderly lady recalled glimpsing a shadow moving behind an upstairs window during the couple's work hours. Another neighbor mentioned nocturnal laughter resembling that of a child emanating from the empty house. Each account added a layer of disquiet to the mounting mystery. Forensic analysis unearthed minuscule fibers throughout the house, vintage cotton and silk, akin to materials adorning antique doll clothing. These fibers were most concentrated around the victims' bodies and the attic. More disconcerting was the absence of any foreign fingerprints, DNA, or footprints, a puzzling absence of a physical presence. As the investigation delved into the property's past, a troubling pattern emerged. Records outlined 3 prior owners who had met mysterious demises over 6 decades, each case shrouded in enigmatic inconsistencies. One family reported finding antique toys in freshly cleaned rooms, while another documented phantom footsteps in an empty house. A newspaper clipping from long ago caught Detective Winters' attention. It detailed a famed doll maker who had resided in the house with his deceased daughter, the circumstances of whose passing were suspicious. Before his own demise, the doll maker had crafted one final doll, a perfect likeness of his daughter. Strangely, this doll was absent from the inventory list when Sarah and Michael purchased the house. Further investigation uncovered a peculiar link among the victims. They had all made alterations to the attic space. Sarah and Michael had initiated renovations, intending to transform the attic into a workspace just before their tragic end. A breakthrough occurred when old photographs were discovered in a concealed compartment beneath the attic floorboards. In these images, the doll maker was seen with his collection, with one doll appearing identical to the one found by Sarah and Michael. The doll seemed to shift positions in the photographs, almost as if it were moving between shots taken moments apart. Infrared scans unveiled a chilling revelation. Faint handprints, invisible to the naked eye, trailed from the attic to the master bedroom, alongside an enigmatic residue of porcelain dust and unidentifiable organic matter. During an interview with a distant relative of the doll maker, rumors surfaced about the doll maker's use of unconventional materials and methods, allegedly infusing his creations with human elements to breathe life into them. Tales of binding spirits to objects through arcane rituals circulated, hinting at the deeper, darker origins of these seemingly innocent dolls. Following this revelation, the investigation hit a dead end. No suspects emerged, and no logical explanation could encompass the perplexing evidence. The case lingered, unresolved and chilling. Detective Winters opted to retain the doll as evidence, securing it in a locked cabinet at the station. However, the following morning, the doll had vanished from the cabinet, and the detective herself was discovered disoriented, with no recollection of the night before, amidst a room where security cameras had captured nothing but static. Subsequently, the house was auctioned off again, its grim past overshadowing its architectural grandeur, and the new owners found the attic bare save for a neatly folded, tattered blanket. The doll remained elusive, and the tragic demise of Sarah and Michael joined the roster of unsolved cases referenced only in hushed tones within the precinct. Rumors persisted of glimpses of the doll in evidence storage, though inventory checks never corroborated its presence. Detective Winters chose an early retirement, citing personal reasons. On her final day, she safeguarded a photograph of the doll maker and his creations in an envelope labeled "Never Open," sealing away the chilling memories. The new owners reported no disturbances, opting to leave the attic undisturbed. Yet on serene nights, whispers circulated of shadows flitting behind attic windows and the faint laughter of a child echoing through the stillness. Story 13, the mysterious package arrived without a trace of its origin. No return label to hint at its journey, no tracking number to reveal its path. A simple cardboard box, slightly damp from the morning dew, found its way to Sarah Miller's doorstep. The address was correct, but the name was wrong. It wasn't meant for her. She hesitated, knowing she should have ignored it, left it untouched where it lay. Yet the pull of curiosity was too strong to resist. With a sense of unease lingering in the air, Sarah decided to unravel the secrets hidden within. As she peeled back the tape sealing the box, her expectations were of mundane contents, perhaps books, clothes, something innocuous. But what she found inside was far from ordinary. Nestled within the cardboard confines was a VHS tape, accompanied by a solitary sticky note bearing just 2 words, "Watch alone." The weight of the black plastic cassette felt strangely heavy in her hands, as if carrying the burden of forbidden knowledge. Sarah's fingers traced the worn edges, feeling the grooves and imperfections etched into the plastic. The handwritten note on the sticky pad bore traces of urgency, the ink pressed forcefully onto the paper, as if the sender had a message too crucial to be ignored. Outside, the suburban neighborhood carried on with its usual rhythms, the distant barking of a dog, the laughter of children playing, the gentle hum of a lawnmower slicing through the morning tranquility. Unaware of the enigma that had just entered Sarah's life, the world continued its steady course. Bringing the package inside, she placed it on her kitchen counter, uncertainty gnawing at her thoughts. The name on the box, Daniel Whitaker, held no significance to her. In her 4 years of residence, she had never encountered a mention of that name. The previous occupants, the Johnsons, had long departed, leaving behind a legacy that seemed to have no connection to the mysterious package now before her. The tug-of-war between curiosity and trepidation intensified as Sarah's gaze fell upon her dusty VCR, a relic of bygone days kept more for sentimental reasons than practical use. There was something about the tape that beckoned to her, a puzzle veiled in worn black plastic. Suppressing her better judgment, she inserted the tape into the machine, the screen crackling to life with static before sharpening into focus. A dimly lit room materialized on the screen, illuminated by a single lamp casting elongated shadows. The camera angle was askew, as if hastily positioned, capturing a man seated in a wooden chair, his features initially shrouded in darkness. "My name is Daniel Whitaker," his voice, soft yet resolute, filled the room. "If you're watching this, someone has found you, and that means they'll find me too." Leaning closer to the camera, his weary countenance came into view, eyes etched with exhaustion, stubble lining his jaw, hair unkempt. "I am innocent," he declared, his voice tinged with desperation. "I need you to believe that. They framed me, planted evidence to make it seem like I was responsible for her death, but I swear I never laid a hand on her." The camera trembled slightly as Daniel adjusted its angle, offering glimpses of the sparse room surrounding him, bare walls, scant furnishings, the temporary abode of a man ready to flee at a moment's notice. "They set me up," he continued, his voice laced with bitterness. "The police report will paint me as the villain, claiming I knew the victim, that we quarreled, that witnesses heard us in conflict. None of it is true. I only learned of Catherine Walsh when her tragic fate made headlines." Tears glistened in his eyes as he recounted the events leading to his unjust accusation. She was murdered in her own home, and somehow my presence was fabricated at the crime scene, he confessed, his voice cracking with emotion. The room fell silent, save for the mechanical whirring of the VCR as Sarah Miller listened, drawn into a web of deceit and intrigue woven by unseen hands. Detective Eliza Ramirez sat in her office, studying the identical VHS tape resting on her desk, the fifth one to surface, each bearing the same plea from Daniel Whitaker, the prime suspect in Catherine Walsh's murder, a man who had vanished into the shadows on the day her lifeless body was discovered. What had initially appeared as an open and shut case now unfurled into a labyrinth of uncertainties and deceptions. The investigation took a sharp turn when Ramirez unearthed Catherine Walsh's involvement in a whistleblower case against PharmaCorp, a formidable pharmaceutical entity entangled in a web of corruption. Walsh had stumbled upon damning evidence of data manipulation in clinical trials, exposing the company's callous disregard for public safety in their race to push a new drug into the market. As Ramirez delved deeper, peculiar anomalies surfaced, a meticulous framing of Whitaker with DNA evidence placed strategically, witness testimonies that seemed rehearsed, surveillance footage conveniently corrupted. The pieces of the puzzle refused to align neatly, hinting at a sinister orchestration behind the scenes. Days turned into nights, and Sarah Miller found herself confronted with a second delivery, a parcel brimming with incriminating documents, a damning testimony to the truth she had unwittingly stumbled upon. Clinical reports, internal memos, email exchanges, all bearing the digital signature of Catherine Walsh, validating her claims of corporate malfeasance. Collaborating with recipients of the other mysterious tapes, Ramirez uncovered Whitaker's digital breadcrumb trail. A former IT security specialist contracted by PharmaCorp, he had chanced upon the digital footprints marking Walsh's pursuit of justice, unbeknownst to her impending doom. They were watching her, Whitaker revealed in a subsequent tape, his voice edged with resignation. I saw the surveillance directives in the system. They were aware of her activities, and when I found myself locked out, she met her tragic end. The tide began to turn as Sarah Miller made a crucial observation on her copy of the tape, a fleeting reflection in a window revealing a row of storage units, a vital clue overlooked by others. Together with Ramirez, they traced the location to Unit 217, unveiling a trove of evidence that would shift the course of the investigation. Within the confines of the storage unit, Daniel Whitaker's journal chronicled the conspiracy orchestrated against him. Catherine Walsh's incriminating files lay bare the truth she had sought to expose, and amidst the stacked boxes, detailed blueprints outlining Whitaker's elaborate framing, penned by PharmaCorp's former security, had a shadowy figure complicit in the web of lies. Justice tiptoed in, not with a thunderous arrest, but through the meticulous assembly of evidence that painted a picture impossible to refute. 3 executives faced indictment, the security chief striking a deal to testify against his erstwhile allies. The tainted drug was yanked from consideration, its dangers averted by the exposure of corporate deception. Emerging from the shadows, Daniel Whitaker bore the scars of his wrongful accusation, a specter of the system's failings. Charges dropped, innocence proven, yet forever marked by the ordeal. Sarah Miller crossed paths with him once more, their meeting a silent acknowledgement of the intertwined fates that had led them here. "Why me?" she inquired, her voice a whisper carried by the breeze. "Why send it to my doorstep?" Daniel met her gaze, weariness etched into his features. "The algorithm chose you," he murmured. I needed individuals untouched by the conspiracy, uncorrupted by the false narratives, people who could discern truth from fiction when the world branded me a criminal. In that moment of shared understanding, the boundaries between guilt and innocence blurred, revealing the fragile threads that tethered justice to the brink of distortion. Sarah broke the silence, her words laden with significance. The wrong address proved to be the right one in the end. The VHS tapes, relics of a clandestine unveiling, found their place within the annals of evidence, a reminder that sometimes truth arrives in unexpected guises, cloaked in anonymity, awaiting the intrepid souls willing to peer beyond the facade. And as the world slumbered in blissful ignorance, Sarah Miller and Daniel Whitaker stood as silent sentinels of a tale untold, a tale of shadows and illumination in equal measure. Story 14, the aged envelope exuded a sense of history, its once white paper now tinged with a soft yellow hue. Yet amidst this antiquity, a fresh stamp stood out, its ink still vibrant from being applied just days prior. With a delicate touch, the detective unfurled the envelope, revealing a single sheet of paper within. Typed in a hurried, jagged font were the words, "I am sorry for what I did." The paper felt damp to the touch, carrying with it a faint scent of iron that lingered in the air. It was only upon closer inspection that the detective noticed a reddish smear along the bottom edge, a stark contrast against the pale paper. This was no ordinary stain, it was human blood, a chilling revelation that sent a shiver down Detective Sarah Morgan's spine. Methodically, she placed the letter into an evidence bag, her gloved hands moving with practiced precision. The forensics team's analysis confirmed her suspicions. The blood on the letter matched the DNA from an unsolved homicide case that had plagued the department for years. The victim, a young journalist named Rebecca Warren, had been brutally murdered in her apartment, her body bearing the cruel marks of multiple stab wounds. Her laptop was missing, her notes strewn across the floor, a silent testament to the violence that had shattered her life. The case had grown cold, despite exhaustive interviews and tireless investigations. Now this mysterious letter had found its way to the homicide division, a cryptic message from an unknown sender. The paper and envelope yielded few clues, save for faint smudges that hinted at gloves being worn during handling. The postmark, however, offered a glimmer of hope, a thread to pull in the darkness that had enshrouded the case for so long. Gathering her team in the dimly lit briefing room, Detective Morgan pinned the letter to the board, a focal point amidst a sea of dead-end leads. "This changes everything," she declared softly, the weight of the words hanging heavy in the air. "Our killer shows remorse." Detective James Chen, her steadfast partner in this relentless pursuit of justice, studied the letter intently. Or perhaps it's a facade, he mused, a calculated move to toy with us to lead us astray. The forensics team delved into the origins of the typewriter's unique imprint, tracing it back to a model long out of production, a rare find, but not an impossible one. As the investigation gained momentum, the detectives delved into Rebecca's life, uncovering a trail of tenacity and a dedication to exposing corruption. Her latest inquiry had delved into a wealthy family embroiled in local politics, their tangled web of secrets casting a shadow over the case. Interviews with Rebecca's boyfriend, Michael Barnes, unveiled a subtle shift in his demeanor, a crack in his facade revealing a hidden truth. With each passing day, the mystery deepened, the shadows of the past reaching out to ensnare the present. A second letter arrived, bearing the same chilling characteristics as the first, a confession cloaked in blood, a whisper from the darkness. The trail led to the mansion of the deceased patriarch, where dark secrets lay hidden within its opulent walls. In a hidden room, a trove of damning evidence awaited discovery: surveillance photos, newspaper clippings, and a vintage typewriter that tied the threads of guilt together. The blood of the victim, Rebecca, sealed their fates, a silent witness to the heinous crime that had been committed. The unraveling of the truth exposed a tangled web of deceit and betrayal, linking unlikely allies in a deadly dance of manipulation and greed. The courtroom became a stage for justice as the pieces of the puzzle fell into place with chilling clarity. Richard, the mastermind behind the murder, was brought to justice, his lies crumbling in the face of overwhelming evidence. As the gavel fell, closing the chapter on a tale of darkness and deception, Detective Morgan approached Rebecca's grieving parents, offering them a semblance of closure amidst the pain. The blood-stained letters, now silent relics of a twisted confession, stood as a stark reminder that even the most carefully orchestrated crimes could unravel under the weight of guilt and remorse. In the quiet of the evidence room, they whispered a haunting truth: that sometimes the echoes of the past can lead to justice in the present, and that even the darkest secrets will eventually come to light. Story 15, the Polaroid lay aged, capturing a distant birthday's essence. Smiles, dancing flames, familiar scenes. Yet within the box of memories passed down to the daughter, a revelation awaited. A specter lingered in the background of each photo, a man shrouded in mystery, lingering just beyond the flickering candlelight. He did not belong to the family frame, an enigma unseen by memory's grasp. With her mother's passing, Sarah Winters unearthed the trove of photographs in the attic, a simple label, memories, enclosing a portal to bygone joy. But within this collection, a sinister undercurrent emerged, tainting the nostalgia with dread. The first glimpse of the intruder was faint, a mere shadow on the periphery during a childhood birthday bash. Gradually, he advanced through the snapshots, drawing closer with each captured moment. Sarah, trembling, contacted her father, unveiling the spectral presence haunting the cherished images. "Dad, who is this stranger in our family photos?" A pause, then a sharp gasp. What stranger? Only kin should be there. Confronted with digital versions of the eerie Polaroids, her father's disbelief mirrored her own growing unease. Detective Marcus Reed, a stalwart presence in the precinct, lent his ear as Sarah laid out the haunting evidence before him. Rain's gentle rhythm painted shifting shadows on the walls, setting the stage for the unfolding mystery. With practiced hands, the detective scrutinized each photo, his interest piqued by the enigmatic figure's progression. Unseen by all in the captured moments, the intruder's deliberate approach towards the children sent a chill down Reed's spine. Could it be the photographer's trickery? Sarah dispelled the notion her mother had been the sole documenter, setting the timer before joining the group. Reed initiated a thorough investigation, reaching out to surviving attendees of the birthday party. Yet no recollection of the shadowy figure surfaced. Facial recognition software faltered, unable to pierce the deliberate concealment orchestrated by the phantom presence. The case teetered on a precipice until Sarah unearthed further photos from other family gatherings, each harboring the same lurking figure, unnoticed but ever present. A digital specialist unveiled hidden details, unearthing a connection to a long-lost maintenance worker, Robert Keller. Dental records tied Keller to unsolved child abductions from years past, coinciding with the events captured in the haunted photographs. Keller's employment history revealed access to remote rental properties, where families had convened only for tragedy to strike. Beneath his former abode's foundation, authorities uncovered damning evidence, a grim mosaic of lost childhoods, relics of vanished innocence. Alone in her quiet apartment, Sarah grappled with the weight of revelations that spanned decades. The detective's call brought news of a breakthrough: the identification of remains near a vacation property, confirming a missing child's fate. As she gazed at the final birthday photo, the figure loomed in the shadows, a silent witness to past horrors. The closure brought by justice was bittersweet, connecting disparate tragedies through the hidden lens of time. The box of photographs now held a somber truth, a testament to unseen dangers lurking within the seemingly innocent frames, weaving a chilling narrative of concealed malevolence. Story 16: The Enigmatic Manor. The new owners found it peculiar the way the old intercom crackled late at night in their Victorian manner, an antique relic rewired but forgotten by time. One evening the husband, driven by curiosity, pressed the button. A whisper, faint yet distinct, crackled through the speaker. "Why did you return?" Startled, he recoiled, hands trembling. His wife, standing behind him, murmured, "I never uttered those words." The manor stood amidst ancient oak trees, its aged facade concealing a modernized interior. Daniel and Meredith Parker, drawn to history, acquired the property at an unexpectedly affordable price, despite the realtor's uneasy demeanor during the tour. The intercom system, linking all rooms, had charmed the couple with its vintage allure. Detective Sarah Reeves arrived at the manor, gravel crunching under her unmarked car's tires. A call reporting a possible break-in had piqued her interest, the dispatcher's tone hinting at a deeper mystery. Daniel Parker, visibly shaken, welcomed her at the entrance, guiding her through the grand foyer. It all began with the intercom, he recounted, leading Detective Reeves into the dimly lit living room. Static, then whispers, then coherent sentences. My wife thought I was imagining it until she heard it too. Meredith, seated rigidly on an antique sofa, clutched a steaming mug but made no attempt to drink. We found something hidden behind the wall, she divulged. Daniel wanted to expand the pantry, and when he removed the drywall, her voice faltered. Concealed within the wall, wrapped in deteriorating plastic, lay a small leather-bound journal. Detective Reeves, wearing gloves, gingerly turned the brittle pages. The elegant yet frantic script belonged to Alina, the apparent former owner, expressing fear that her husband Vincent intended harm. Last entry dates back 30 years, Daniel elaborated. After that, silence. The previous owners mentioned buying it from an elderly man who relocated to a retirement community. Investigation unveiled that Vincent and Alina Blackwood had once resided in the house. Records indicated Vincent sold the property shortly after Alina's disappearance, with no trace of her thereafter. No divorce papers, no change of address, no financial activity in her name post the final journal entry. Detective Reeves mobilized a team to scrutinize the property thoroughly. Ground-penetrating radar exposed anomalies beneath the garden shed's concrete foundation. As the investigators breached the aged concrete, the truth emerged: human remains. Forensic analysis identified the skeleton as a woman in her 40s, bearing signs of head trauma. Among the bones, a gold wedding band bore the inscription, "To Alina, my eternal love." The case against Vincent Blackwood swiftly solidified. Elderly and confined to a care facility, he comprehended the charges leveled against him. His chilling admission sent shivers down the detective's spine. "She wouldn't cease talking," Vincent calmly confessed. "Constant chatter through that cursed intercom, questioning me. I disconnected it, but she rewired it, insisting on always being able to reach me." His vacant gaze met theirs. "I craved silence." In his confession, Vincent unveiled his elaborate scheme to fabricate Alina's abandonment, even sending forged postcards from varied locations. He had dwelled in the house for years, obliviously walking over his wife's hidden resting place daily. The trial concluded swiftly, Vincent pleading guilty to murder. The judge acknowledged the premeditated nature of the crime and the decades of deceit that ensued. Daniel and Meredith reluctantly sold the manor, unable to bear its grim past. Before departing, they held a memorial for a leaner in the restored garden. The intercom system was removed by subsequent owners during renovations. Workers reported static and whispers during the extraction, attributing it to interference from their tools. Detective Reeves revisited the Blackwood case file before its archival. As she sealed the manila folder, she pondered how the house itself had unraveled its secret across time. Justice had finally reached Vincent Blackwood thanks to a leaner's resolute voice. The case earned the moniker the house that echoed back among local law enforcement. Occasionally on her way home, Detective Reeves would slow down near the manor, the window cracked open, listening for whispers carried by the wind. Story 17. The motel stood there, a relic of a forgotten time, its walls whispering stories of transient guests passing through. It was a place where people sought shelter for a night, a temporary haven shrouded in mystery. The weary clerk handed her the key, a glint of warning in his eyes. "Just don't take the last door on the left," he murmured cryptically, his words lingering in the air like a ghostly echo. Intrigue tugged at her curiosity, a silent invitation to unravel the enigma of that forbidden door. That night, as shadows danced along the dimly lit hallway, she found herself standing before it. The handle sent shivers down her spine, icy to the touch. The door appeared nondescript, blending in with its neighbors until she leaned in, pressing her ear against its weathered surface. A faint, rhythmic breath whispered from the other side, a haunting presence that stirred the depths of her soul. Detective Morgan Reed, with weariness etched on her face, stepped into the scene cloaked in yellow crime scene tape, a barrier between the ordinary world and the grim reality within. The metallic tang of blood greeted her senses, a grim reminder of lives interrupted. The room bore witness to a macabre tale. A spotless bathroom, an untouched bed, and in between, the tragedy of a life extinguished too soon. A young woman lay motionless on the floor, her golden locks splayed out like a halo, her vacant gaze fixed on unseen horrors. Reed knelt beside the victim, a silent observer in a realm of unspeakable sorrow. The forensic technician's voice cut through the heavy silence, detailing the grim familiarity of the crime scene. "Third one this season," he stated matter-of-factly, snapping photographs to preserve the haunting tableau. Reed absorbed the grim reality, a pattern emerging from the shadows, a killer's dark signature etched in the fabric of the forgotten motel. Back at the station, Reed delved into the web of clues, each thread leading her deeper into the labyrinth of a killer's mind. The victims, all bearing a striking resemblance, painted a portrait of fear and tragedy. The whispers of a predator on the prowl echoed through the corridors of the city, sending shivers down the spines of its inhabitants. As the investigation unfurled, a glimmer of hope emerged from the shadows. A name, a connection: Charles Emerson. The senior vice president harbored secrets beneath his polished facade, a darkness lurking behind his steely gaze. Reed pursued the truth relentlessly, unearthing a web of deceit woven from lies and betrayal. The pieces fell into place, revealing a chilling truth. Emerson's meticulously crafted world crumbled under the weight of evidence, a sinister tapestry of manipulation and obsession. His victims, chosen with cruel precision, bore the likeness of a past he sought to erase, their fates sealed by his callous hand. In the courtroom, justice cast its unforgiving gaze upon Emerson, a puppet of his own depravity. The families of the fallen found solace in the verdict, a semblance of closure in a world tainted by darkness. Reed, haunted by the echoes of the past, carried the weight of the case with her, a silent reminder of the thin veil between order and chaos. The media dubbed it the door on the left case, a cautionary tale of unchecked desires and forgotten sins. Psychologists dissected Emerson's twisted psyche, while armchair detectives pored over the details, seeking answers in the shadows. But for Reed, the truth lingered in the quiet moments, in the haunting corridors of memory where echoes of the past whispered their secrets. In the evidence locker, 3 keys lay dormant, relics of a chapter closed but never forgotten. Each key a silent witness to the darkness that lurks behind closed doors, a reminder that some mysteries are best left undisturbed, their secrets buried in the shadows of the night. And as Reed walked down hotel hallways, the ghosts of the past trailing behind her, she knew that some doors, once opened, could never be closed again. Story 18. It arrived in the mail, wrapped in a plain envelope with no return address. A single brass key, worn with time. The homeowner didn't recognize it, but something about it felt familiar. When she slid it into every lock she owned, nothing turned. It wasn't hers. But when she placed it on the coffee table, the old grandfather clock in the hallway let out a single, hollow chime despite having been broken for years. Sarah Miller reported the strange occurrence to authorities after finding the mysterious key. What seemed like an odd mishap soon unraveled into one of the most disturbing criminal investigations the quiet suburban neighborhood had ever witnessed. The responding officer initially dismissed her concerns. A key in the mail, perhaps a mistake, he suggested. But Sarah insisted something felt wrong. The officer reluctantly took the key as evidence, mostly to appease her, placing it in a small evidence bag that would later become central to a sprawling investigation. Detective Robert Harmon received the case file during the morning briefing. A veteran investigator with the Special Victims Unit, he had developed an intuition for cases that would evolve beyond their seemingly innocuous beginnings. The brass key sat on his desk, unremarkable yet somehow unsettling. Background checks revealed Sarah had no criminal history. A retired high school English teacher, widowed, with 2 adult children living across the country. Nothing suspicious in her financial records, phone logs, or social media. She appeared to be exactly what she claimed, an innocent recipient of something strange. The forensic team found no fingerprints on the key besides Sarah's. The envelope yielded nothing except a generic postmark from the regional distribution center. No DNA, no trace evidence. The key itself was a standard Schlage, available at any hardware store, though well worn and at least several years old. The breakthrough came unexpectedly when Detective Harmon decided to run the key's unique bidding pattern through the department database. A cold case from 7 years prior had documented an identical key pattern belonging to a storage unit where investigators had found blood-stained carpet, cutting tools, and photographs of unidentified women. The original investigation had stalled without sufficient evidence to identify a suspect. Harmon pulled the dusty case files. The detective who had worked the case had since retired. The storage unit had been rented under a false identity, paid in cash. Surveillance footage had long been overwritten. The evidence collected had yielded partial DNA samples, but no matches in any criminal database. The photographs recovered from the storage unit showed 5 different women, all appearing unconscious. Only 3 had been identified during the original investigation, all reported missing, but never found. Their cases remained open, classified as suspected homicides without bodies. Sarah Miller recognized none of the women when shown the photographs. She grew increasingly anxious as the investigation proceeded, installing new locks and a security system in her home. The question lingered, why had someone sent her this key? Harmon ordered a fresh analysis of the original evidence using newer techniques. The partial DNA sample was expanded and run through genealogical databases. This yielded a distant familial match, a second cousin twice removed from the suspect. Working backward through family trees, investigators narrowed their focus to Harold Jenkins, who had lived 2 streets away from Sarah Miller until moving away approximately 6 years ago. His current whereabouts were unknown. Further investigation revealed Jenkins had been a substitute teacher at the same school where Sarah taught, though they had minimal documented interaction. His employment records showed scattered work history, long unexplained gaps, and frequent relocations. His former residence yielded nothing unusual upon inspection. Neighbors described him as quiet, unremarkable, someone who kept to himself, the common refrain that often follows revelations about predators hiding in plain sight. The big question remained unanswered: why send the key now? Why to Sarah Miller? Harmon theorized it might be a trophy, a warning, or perhaps a macabre invitation. The search for Jenkins intensified. His driver's license hadn't been renewed, no credit card activity, no tax returns. The digital breadcrumbs people typically leave behind were conspicuously absent, suggesting an intentional effort to remain untraceable. The true horror of the case emerged when authorities investigated a small cabin registered to Jenkins' deceased mother. Beneath the weathered wooden floorboards, investigators discovered a concealed room accessible only through a trapdoor. Inside, meticulously organized shelves held dozens of identical brass keys, each with a name and date engraved on a small attached tag. 5 keys corresponded to the women from the photographs. The remaining keys, 27 in total, presented a horrifying implication of additional victims previously unknown to authorities. Buried behind the cabin, forensic teams recovered human remains. The excavation continued for weeks as investigators unearthed multiple bodies in varying states of decomposition. Sarah received round-the-clock protection as the manhunt for Jenkins expanded nationwide. Behavioral analysts suggested the key represented a twisted invitation, Jenkins selecting Sarah as someone to appreciate his work. The press dubbed him the Keymaster, a name that spread rapidly across national headlines. Fear permeated the community as residents questioned how such horror had existed among them undetected. Detection dogs tracked a scent from the cabin into the surrounding wilderness. Search teams combed dense forest areas. Thermal imaging drones scanned terrain too dangerous for ground teams. The manhunt became one of the largest in regional history. A wildlife photographer hiking in remote woods captured an image of someone matching Jenkins' description. The grainy photograph showed a bearded man with hollow eyes carrying a backpack, heading deeper into the wilderness. Authorities closed in on the area, establishing a perimeter. Tactical teams navigated difficult terrain while psychological profilers predicted Jenkins would not surrender. They anticipated he might have prepared for this contingency with hidden supplies and escape routes. The final confrontation occurred when a patrol officer encountered Jenkins attempting to cross a river. Rather than surrender, Jenkins retreated to higher ground, where he barricaded himself in an abandoned fire observation tower. Negotiators attempted communication for hours without response. When tactical teams finally breached the tower, they found Jenkins dead from a self-inflicted wound. Beside his body lay a journal containing detailed accounts of his crimes, alongside a single brass key identical to the one Sarah had received. Inside a waterproof container, investigators discovered additional evidence, including photographs, maps marking burial locations, and personal effects taken from victims, a methodically preserved record of atrocities spanning nearly a decade. The journal's final entry addressed Sarah directly. "You never noticed me, but I noticed everything about you. The key opens nothing because what I wanted to give you cannot be unlocked with metal, only with recognition. Now everyone will remember my name." The subsequent investigation identified 32 victims in total. Families who had spent years wondering about missing loved ones finally received answers, though the closure came with the unbearable weight of confirmed tragedy. Sarah never returned to her home, unable to reconcile the horror that had brushed so close to her ordinary life. The grandfather clock that had mysteriously chimed was examined and found to contain a small wireless receiver Jenkins had been watching, waiting for the moment she received his gift. The case remains one of the most disturbing examples of predatory behavior hiding beneath a veneer of normalcy. Psychological researchers continue studying Jenkins' writings, seeking insights to identify similar offenders before they act. And somewhere in an evidence locker, a collection of brass keys sits in silent testimony to lives cut short, each key opening nothing, yet unlocking a devastating truth about the darkness that sometimes hides behind unremarkable facades. Story 19. The quaint costume shop was on the verge of closure, its shelves now bare as it sold off its remnants of the past. Among the scattered relics, a woman's eyes landed on a solitary mask, nestled in the shadows of a forgotten shelf. Intrigued, she reached out and lifted it delicately, its features both exquisite and disconcertingly lifelike. Approaching the counter, she placed the mask down, prompting a moment of unease in the cashier. "That's not from our collection," he muttered, a hint of confusion tainting his voice. Perplexed, the woman checked for a tag, only to find none. With a nonchalant shrug, she decided to take it home. As the night draped its veil over the world, a soft sound stirred her from slumber. Fabric whispered, shifting in the darkness. Her eyes flickered open to find the mask no longer resting on the dresser where she had left it. Instead, it perched upon her nightstand, its gaze fixed upon her, a silent sentinel in the stillness of the room. Catherine Reed, the woman whose curiosity had led her to claim the mysterious mask, was discovered by her concerned neighbor the following morning. The front door stood ajar, allowing the gentle morning light to spill into the dim interior of the otherwise quiet abode. Intrigued by the unusual scene, the neighbor, arriving to return a borrowed book, was met with a sight that would linger in the minds of investigators for years to come. Catherine lay motionless on the bedroom floor, the enigmatic mask nowhere to be seen. Detective Morgan arrived at the scene as forensics meticulously documented every detail. The rhythmic clicks of the shutter echoed softly in the background, a haunting accompaniment to the whispered exchanges among the investigators. "Not a trace of forced entry," an officer remarked, his pen scratching against the notepad as he surveyed the room. The detective's keen eyes roamed the space, absorbing every nuance, every subtlety that could offer a glimpse into the mysterious demise of Catherine Reed. A partially open drawer, a lipstick-stained water glass on the nightstand, mundane details intermingled with the inexplicable loss of life that had befallen the once vibrant woman. The medical examiner, face etched with solemnity, could offer no immediate answers. The cause of death remained shrouded in uncertainty, no visible wounds or signs of struggle to provide a clue. Gesturing towards Catherine's frozen expression of terror, the medical examiner's voice carried a weight of somber realization. The detective, drawn to the haunting visage of the deceased, whispered a chilling truth. Something frightened her to the core. Catherine, known in her circles as a meticulous art appraiser with a keen eye for authenticity, now lay in eternal repose, her talents and insights forever silenced. Colleagues spoke of her discerning abilities, her knack for spotting the subtlest of discrepancies that hinted at deception. The trail of mystery deepened as security footage from the costume shop unveiled a perplexing encounter. The cashier's genuine bewilderment at the mask's origin raised more questions than answers, setting the stage for a narrative woven with threads of the inexplicable. Visiting the now vacant shop, the detective confronted the owner, whose demeanor betrayed a nervous tension. A tale of the mask's sudden appearance during a clearance sale unraveled, intertwined with whispers of a shadowy past linked to an enigmatic collector's estate sale. A breakthrough emerged when forensics unearthed microscopic fibers clutched in Catherine's lifeless fingers. The peculiar nature of these fibers, a blend of human hair and an unidentified organic material defying classification, hinted at a realm beyond conventional understanding. Delving deeper into the annals of time, records surfaced, chronicling a series of enigmatic deaths mirroring Catherine's tragic fate. Each victim, like pieces in a macabre puzzle, had crossed paths with an uncanny mask before meeting their untimely demise, their faces etched with the same harrowing terror. A retired detective, a custodian of forgotten secrets, shared a revelation veiled in shadows. Ancient symbols hidden within the masks, a cryptic link to a ritual of soul transference, whispered of a sinister legacy that spanned generations. A journal clandestinely tucked away in Catherine's apartment unveiled a descent into darkness, a descent into a realm where reality blurred with nightmare. Her words, etched in frantic script, bore witness to a chilling truth. The mask was not a mere object, but a vessel of malevolent intent, a harbinger of doom. As the pieces of the puzzle coalesced, the detective grappled with the unfathomable entity that fed on fear, a malevolent force that transcended mortal comprehension. The final verdict of the medical examiner, cardiac arrest induced by sheer terror, painted a portrait of horror that defied rational explanation. Surveillance footage, a silent witness to the macabre dance of fate, revealed a figure cloaked in shadows, departing Catherine's home wearing a mask, a twisted mimicry of her essence, a specter haunting the realm of the living. The hunt for the elusive mask led investigators on a journey that transcended geographical boundaries, a quest that wove through the tapestry of time and space. Reports of its reappearance in a distant vintage shop breathed life into a dormant nightmare, propelling the search into uncharted waters. Yet as fate would have it, the mask slipped through their grasp once more, vanishing into the hands of an unknown buyer, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and lingering dread. The case, shrouded in enigma, lingered in the realm of the unsolved, a testament to the inscrutable nature of the forces at play. The detective, custodian of the forbidden knowledge, safeguarded Catherine's journal as a grim reminder of the darkness that lurked beyond the veil of ordinary existence. In the dead of night, when shadows danced with whispered secrets, she felt the weight of unseen eyes upon her, a chilling reminder of the mask's insidious legacy. Locking doors, securing windows, she sought solace in the fragile illusion of safety, knowing that somewhere out there, the mask bided its time, a malevolent specter waiting to ensnare another unwitting soul. And in the silence of the night, as the world slumbered, the mask watched, its hollow gaze fixed on the threshold of dreams, a harbinger of nightmares yet to unfold. Story 20, the aged apartment exuded a sense of history, its time-worn walls holding secrets within their crevices. The heating system emitted low groans, the pipes occasionally rattling with a familiar cadence. It was all part of the building's character, or so she convinced herself. But then in the stillness of the night, a faint voice pierced through the vents, weaving its way into her consciousness. It wasn't the ordinary sounds of neighbors going about their lives. It was a soft whisper calling out to her, beckoning her closer. Intrigued and slightly unnerved, she leaned in, pressing her ear against the metal grate. A chilly breath brushed past her cheek, followed by a playful yet eerie utterance, "I know you can hear me." Detective Morgan Shaw found herself at the heart of an empty apartment, the air heavy with a sense of foreboding. Her gaze fixated on the rusty vent cover that had been forcibly removed from the wall, exposing the dark passage within. The forensic team meticulously combed through the scene, documenting every detail with precision as cameras flashed in the dimly lit room. Alina Reeves, the missing woman whose fate had led them here, had vanished without a trace until the pungent odor caught the building manager's attention. Officer Patel, his voice laced with intrigue, recounted the details from his notepad. Alina had voiced concerns about hearing whispers through the vents, only to be dismissed by the building management, citing the building's age and its peculiar noises. Shaw crouched by the vent, tracing the deep scratch marks around its edges with a contemplative gaze. The markings bore a desperation that hinted at a struggle, as if someone trapped inside had clawed frantically for freedom. Alina, a beloved kindergarten teacher with a penchant for nurturing plants, had left behind a community in distress. Her absence was a void felt by many, from her adoring students who crafted cards in her honor to her worried sister who had reported her disappearance. During the interview, Alina's sister revealed a troubling change in Alina's demeanor leading up to her vanishing act. Paranoia, fueled by a belief that unseen eyes watched her every move, had gripped Alina in the weeks preceding her mysterious disappearance. Surveying the apartment anew, Shaw's trained eye caught subtle clues that painted a haunting picture. The meticulously arranged bed, the abandoned coffee mug in the sink, and the chair strategically placed beneath the vent all spoke of a presence that lingered unseen yet palpable. The forensic analysis yielded chilling revelations. Fibers from Alina's clothing caught in the vent, a foreign fingerprint adorning the inside of the vent cover, and most disturbingly, audio recordings retrieved from Alina's phone. Alone in her car, rain cascading in a soothing rhythm on the rooftop, Shaw listened to the recordings that unraveled a tale of whispered exchanges between Alina and an unseen entity. The faint murmurings, the eerie responses, it was a glimpse into a world where reality blurred with the unknown, where the line between sanity and darkness grew thin. Delving deeper into the building's history, Shaw uncovered a sinister pattern. Past tenants had fled, citing unsettling experiences within the walls. Reports of voices, hallucinations, and unexplained phenomena painted a grim portrait of apartment 4B's dark legacy. The building superintendent, Harold Weber, emerged as a shadowy figure with keys to every door, his demeanor shifting when questioned about the apartment's troubled past. A breakthrough came when a concealed passage was unearthed behind a loose tile in Alina's bathroom, unveiling a hidden world of voyeurism and manipulation. The narrow maintenance tunnel harbored remnants of a clandestine presence, a flashlight, food wrappers, a chilling testament to an intruder lurking within the building's infrastructure. Weber's meticulously maintained facade crumbled under the weight of incriminating evidence. His computer revealed a trove of illicit recordings, a digital diary chronicling his obsession with Alina, and a storage unit filled with mementos of his past victims. The arrest was a quiet affair, Weber's eerie calmness a stark contrast to the horrors he had orchestrated. As the truth unraveled in court, a chilling narrative of predatory surveillance and psychological manipulation emerged. Weber's twisted delusions clashed with the stark reality of his crimes, leading to a swift and unanimous guilty verdict. Even as he was escorted away, his chilling parting words lingered in Shaw's mind, a haunting reminder of the darkness that lurked within the building's walls. With Weber behind bars, the apartment building stood silent, its walls holding memories of the past within their weathered embrace. Despite efforts to cleanse the space of its tainted history, whispers still echoed through the vents, a reminder of the chilling legacy that lingered within the building's very foundation. The residents, now wary of the unseen forces at play, grappled with the unsettling sounds that permeated the once quiet halls. The old heating system groaned, the pipes rattled, and the whispers persisted, a haunting melody that whispered of secrets long buried within the building's walls. Story 21. In the heart of the city, nestled among the bustling streets and honking cars, there stood a quaint coffee shop. For years, it had been a haven for a mysterious man who frequented its dimly lit corners. His presence was as constant as the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, yet he remained a stranger to all, known only by the title of John Doe in the cold case files. Detective Sarah Mercer found herself drawn into the enigma of this man who seemed to slip through the cracks of reality. His routine was as familiar as the sunrise entering the shop, ordering his black coffee, and disappearing into the shadows of the corner table. But one day, he simply vanished, leaving behind a wallet with no trace of his identity except for a haunting photograph. As Mercer delved deeper into the enigmatic disappearance, she uncovered a web of peculiarities that defied logic. Security footage revealed the ordinary actions of an extraordinary man writing in a notebook filled with cryptic symbols, gazing out the window with a contemplative air, and then, in a blink of an eye, vanishing into thin air without a trace. The investigation led Mercer down a rabbit hole of mystery and intrigue. The wallet held no answers, the notebook was a puzzle unsolved, and the mirror in the coffee shop seemed to hold secrets within its ornate frame. Each clue only deepened the enigma surrounding the enigmatic John Doe, a man who seemed to exist on the fringes of reality itself. As Mercer sought to unravel the tangled threads of the case, a strange pattern began to emerge. Whispers of temporal displacement and identity transference echoed through the journal entries found hidden behind the antique mirror. The coffee shop, it seemed, was a nexus of intersecting realities, a place where the boundaries between worlds blurred and merged. But as Mercer delved deeper into the mysteries surrounding John Doe, she realized that some secrets were not meant to be uncovered. The elderly physicist, Margaret Keller, shed light on the dark experiments of Daniel Weston, a brilliant mind lost to the realms beyond our understanding. Weston had dared to breach the boundaries of existence, seeking to traverse the parallel realities that lie just beyond our grasp. In the end, the truth was as elusive as the man who didn't exist. The shattered mirror, the fading echoes of a forgotten experiment, and the enigmatic figure of Daniel Weston watching himself from across the void all pointed to a conclusion that defied logic and reason. The window had closed, the experiment was complete, and the mysteries of the coffee shop faded into whispers on the wind. And so Detective Mercer, haunted by the specter of a man who slipped through the cracks of reality, found herself at a crossroads. The notebook in her hands, the mirror fragment on her wall, and the echoes of a world beyond our own all beckoned her to the edge of possibility, where reality and illusion intertwined in a dance as old as time itself. As the city slumbered and the stars whispered their secrets to the night, Mercer sat on her porch, pen in hand, writing furiously in a notebook identical to Weston's. The fragment of the antique mirror shimmered in the moonlight, its surface rippling like a pond disturbed by a gentle breeze. And in that moment, as the world held its breath, the mysteries of the man who didn't exist lingered on, a ghostly whisper in the tapestry of dreams. Story 22. In the beginning, there was a mere flicker, a glitch in the baby monitor's feed. The mother brushed it off as mere interference, but then the audio crackled and a voice softly whispered, "SHHH, go back to sleep." Her blood ran cold. Racing to her son's room, heart pounding in her chest, she found the crib empty. The window was shut tight. The door remained locked. The only thing amiss was a stuffed rabbit on the floor, its glassy black eyes fixed on her. Rebecca's screams echoed until her throat was raw. The neighbors heard her cries and dialed emergency services. Upon arrival, authorities discovered her clutching the stuffed rabbit, swaying back and forth on the nursery floor. The 4-month-old infant, Samuel, had vanished without a trace. The initial probe yielded few clues. No signs of forced entry were evident. The security system had stayed armed all night. The baby monitor footage showed nothing unusual except for that mysterious voice and static. Investigators were puzzled. How could an intruder slip into a locked home, snatch a child, and depart without a trace except for a displaced toy? Rebecca became the prime suspect. Her husband, Daniel, was away on business. Tensions had strained their marriage since Samuel's birth. Medical records revealed Rebecca had sought help for postpartum depression. A detective noted her eerily calm demeanor during questioning, considering the circumstances. The community buzzed with rumors. Then a breakthrough emerged. Forensics uncovered microscopic fibers on the nursery windowsill, distinct from household fabrics or family clothing. These fibers matched a rare climbing rope, hinting at a skilled intruder reaching the second-floor nursery from outside. The focus shifted. Security footage from neighbors revealed a shadowy figure moving amidst the night shadows. A partial footprint in the garden's soil matched a boot used by military and skilled climbers. Rebecca was no longer the center of attention. Daniel returned from his trip, distressed and bewildered. Investigators noticed unusual calluses on his hands. When probed, he mentioned rock climbing as a recent stress-relieving hobby. Financial records unveiled concerning details. Daniel had acquired a hefty life insurance policy on Samuel. Phone records showed calls to an unknown number that ceased before the abduction. The case darkened when it surfaced that Daniel had a secret second family in another town, unbeknownst to Rebecca. As the inquiry deepened, the baby monitor emerged as crucial evidence. Digital forensics unveiled the device had been hacked. The voice wasn't from inside the nursery, but remotely transmitted to Rebecca's bedside receiver. Tracking the intrusion led to a basement where Samuel was found, in the care of a woman named Elaine. She surrendered silently, her eyes empty as she was led away in restraints. The link emerged through old pictures and DNA testing. Elaine was Daniel's first wife, who had endured a miscarriage years before. Their marriage crumbled after the loss, but Elaine never recovered. She had monitored Daniel's life online, witnessing his new family with Rebecca. Daniel denied involvement, but digital evidence spoke differently. His climbing gear matched fibers on the windowsill and the boot print in the garden. Encrypted messages between Daniel and Elaine detailed their scheme. He'd breached the security system. She'd take the child they both deemed hers, and insurance money would fund their new life. During trial, the courtroom hushed as the prosecution played enhanced audio from the baby monitor. Beside the whispered words that had chilled Rebecca, forensic audio experts isolated a cough, Daniel's distinctive cough, placing him at the scene of the abduction he denied. The jury swiftly reached a verdict. Daniel and Elaine received maximum sentences for kidnapping, conspiracy, and endangering a child. Rebecca and Samuel relocated to rebuild their lives, far from haunting memories. The case reshaped how modern abductions are investigated. Baby monitors nationwide were scrutinized for vulnerabilities. Parents bolstered nursery security. Experts cautioned on the growing sophistication of crimes exploiting technology against the vulnerable. Samuel grew up without the memory of his disappearance. Rebecca kept the stuffed rabbit tucked away in a closet. She couldn't discard it, nor face those glassy black eyes that had seen what truly unfolded when the baby monitor transmitted that whispered voice in the night. The monitor never lied. It captured the truth, albeit in an unexpected manner. Story 23, the wooden plank shifted under her weight, hinting at secrets hidden beneath the surface. Intrigued, she knelt down, tracing the edges of the loose board with gentle fingers. The floor whispered of mysteries waiting to be unveiled. With deliberate care, she lifted the boards, revealing a shadowy, cramped space beneath the house. Dust danced in the faint light, cobwebs clinging to forgotten corners. But as her eyes adjusted, shapes emerged from the darkness: a musty mattress, a solitary chair, and in the shadows, a weathered notebook filled with repetitions of a single name, her own. Detective Morgan Reed stood silently behind Sarah Coleman, observing the mix of fear and disbelief in her eyes as she peered into the abyss beneath her new home. It wasn't just a hidden room they had discovered. It was a violation of her sanctuary, an intrusion of malevolence into what was meant to be a fresh beginning. "Don't disturb anything." Detective Reed's voice was a steady anchor in the unsettling silence. Clicking on her flashlight, she cast a beam of light that revealed walls adorned with surveillance photos, moments of Sarah's life captured without her knowledge. A shrine of obsession cultivated right beneath her feet. Sarah had acquired the quaint cottage from the estate of Walter Green, an elderly recluse who had passed away with no known kin. The property had sat vacant for months, its past shrouded in silence. The listing had painted it as charming, a fixer-upper with hidden potential. No whispers of the hidden chamber had reached Sarah during inspections or negotiations. "I never met him," Sarah murmured, her voice a fragile echo in the eerie space. "The neighbors said he kept to himself." "I thought that basement had been sealed off long ago." That's what the reports said. Crime scene investigators arrived, their tools clattering on the wooden floors as they began their meticulous work. Every detail was documented, every piece of evidence catalogued. The mattress, chair, and notebook were carefully extracted from the clandestine room. Forensic experts uncovered a tapestry of Walter Green's fingerprints, a haunting reminder of his unseen presence. The investigators unraveled a timeline that sent shivers down their spines. Walter had been watching Sarah for years, blending into her world like a shadow. He had mirrored her routines, frequented her favorite spots, all without her ever noticing his existence. This level of fixation tends to escalate, the department psychologist explained, the gravity of the situation settling heavily in the room. The hidden room suggests a progression towards something more sinister. Detective Reed's inquiries took an unexpected turn when she spoke with Walter's former coworker from the local shopping center. The man's nervous demeanor betrayed a hidden truth. Walter spoke of her sometimes, he confessed, his gaze troubled. Said she reminded him of someone. "I thought it was harmless admiration. I never imagined." His voice trailed off, lost in memories he wished he could erase. A search of Walter's locker at work unveiled a key that led to a storage unit registered in his name. The metallic door screeched open, revealing a chilling replica of Sarah's old life, an eerie copy of her apartment, meticulously recreated down to the smallest details. A mannequin with her likeness sat at a desk, a silent echo of Walter's twisted obsession. The investigation peeled back layers of Walter's past, unearthing a history of institutionalization and untreated delusions. His fixation on Sarah had roots in a mental illness that had laid dormant for decades, only to resurface with terrifying intensity. Reed spread out the evidence before her team, each photograph a piece of a puzzle that painted a grim picture of Walter's distorted reality. Sarah made the difficult decision to sell the house, the shadows of Walter's presence too heavy to bear. As she stood in the empty living room with her realtor, a shiver ran down her spine. "I can't help but wonder what might have unfolded if he hadn't been stopped in time," she confessed softly. How long would I have lived here, unaware of the eyes watching me, the secrets hidden beneath my feet? Walter's death closed the chapter on the case, labeled as stalking with intent to abduct. The echoes of his obsession lingered, a cautionary tale of the unseen dangers that lurk in the shadows. Sarah moved away, seeking solace in anonymity and safety. Detective Reed, a silent guardian in the night, checked on her from afar, a silent vow to protect her from the specter of Walter's fixation. The cottage found new owners, unaware of the darkness that had once tainted its walls. The hidden room was sealed off, the past locked away for eternity. Life moved on, but for those who knew the truth, the tale of the room beneath the floor whispered of silent threats, of monsters that walk among us undetected, and of the fragile line between safety and peril. Story 24, The Enigma of Rebecca Thorne. She wiped away the steam on the mirror, gazing at her reflection, but a sense of unease crept over her. Everything seemed normal, her face, her attire, yet a lingering discomfort enveloped her. A flicker caught in the corner of her eye, a movement not of her own, and as she turned away, her reflection remained motionless, watching. Thus began the enigmatic tale of Rebecca Thorne, unfolding in the quietude of her suburban abode. Rebecca dwelled in a modest apartment, a solitary figure in the tranquil neighborhood. Known for her meticulous nature and reserved demeanor, she led a life of routine and precision. No one could have foreseen that she would soon find herself at the heart of a perplexing mystery that would bewilder investigators and haunt the community for years to come. Initially, subtle incidents arose, objects subtly shifted in her home, not missing but rearranged. A coffee mug on a different shelf, books reorganized, her toothbrush misplaced. She brushed off these peculiarities as mere lapses in memory, attributing them to her long hours analyzing data under the harsh glare of fluorescent lights. Detective Marion Shaw was first alerted to Rebecca's plight after she hesitantly reached out following weeks of disturbances. The initial assessment deemed it non-criminal, more suited for mental health services than police intervention. Yet the sense of foreboding lingered, with Rebecca feeling that something was amiss within the confines of her home. The turning point came with the eerie incident in the bathroom mirror. In vivid detail, Rebecca recounted how her reflection appeared to move independently, watching her even in solitude. This time, she had proof surveillance footage from a camera pointed at her front door. The chilling video unveiled a doppelganger of Rebecca, entering her apartment with a key while she was already at her workplace miles away. A sense of disquiet gripped even the seasoned officers as they scrutinized the footage. The imposter mirrored Rebecca flawlessly, down to the minutest detail. The investigation delved deeper, revealing fingerprints solely belonging to Rebecca throughout her residence, with no trace of foreign DNA. Neighbors recounted seeing nothing out of the ordinary, except for Rebecca's usual comings and goings. As the disturbances escalated, Rebecca meticulously documented each aberration. Food vanished from her fridge, unauthorized searches appeared on her computer, and unsettling selfies surfaced on her phone, bearing a subtle distortion in her features. "I feel like I'm descending into madness," she confided to Detective Shaw, sensing a malevolent force at play. A breakthrough emerged when a pattern surfaced in the surveillance footage. The doppelganger infiltrated only during Rebecca's scheduled absences for specific engagements. The realization dawned that someone intimately acquainted with her routine was orchestrating these incursions with meticulous precision. The investigation honed in on a former colleague, Lily Winters, whose erratic behavior had led to her dismissal. Lily's fixation on Rebecca became evident through a chilling discovery in her abode, a meticulously crafted replica of Rebecca's life, complete with a shrine-like homage to her existence. Photographs adorn the walls, attesting to Lily's obsessive emulation of Rebecca's every move. Lily's abrupt disappearance upon the authorities' pursuit hinted at a sinister intent. A nationwide manhunt ensued, while Rebecca, now under protective custody, watched from a secluded safe house. Astonishment struck when security footage revealed an imposter resembling Rebecca infiltrating her former workplace, delving into her files as if assuming her identity. The enigma remained unsolved, with Lily Winters eluding capture. Rebecca Thorne chose to forge a new identity in seclusion, leaving her former life behind. Detective Shaw, haunted by the uncanny resemblance between the two women, pondered the depths of identity and the chilling lengths one would go to usurp another's existence. In the silence of her office, Shaw often mused on the essence of selfhood, cautioning her colleagues about the vulnerability of identity. The true horror she imparted lay not in resemblance, but in the fervent desire to obliterate one's own essence in a bid to assume another's identity. Identity, she reflected, was a treasure safeguarded zealously, its true worth illuminated only when threatened by a covetous interloper. Story 25. The old house had sat empty for what felt like an eternity, its history shrouded in whispers and shadows. Whispers of a young woman who vanished without a trace, leaving behind a room locked from the inside, untouched by time. When the new occupants crossed the threshold, they were met with a heavy stillness, a silence that seemed to echo with secrets long kept. The bedroom, once a sanctuary, now a silent witness to a mystery waiting to be unraveled. As they forced open the stubborn door, a wave of stale air greeted them, thick with the weight of neglect. But something lingered, unseen yet palpable, a feeling that the room held more than just dust and forgotten memories. The bed neatly made, the mirror devoid of smudges, a single candle extinguished, its wax a frozen cascade of lost moments. And there on the desk, a notebook lay open, its pages whispering of a story left unfinished. Detective Morgan delved into the notebook, tracing the words left behind by Elise Winters, a young soul lost to the darkness of the unknown. Her elegant script danced across the pages, each stroke a clue, each word a plea for understanding. The final entry, etched with urgency, spoke of unseen watchers and looming danger, a cryptic message from a world beyond reach. The room bore witness to a life interrupted, a story cut short by the cruel hands of fate. Elise, a paralegal entangled in a web of deceit and betrayal, her meticulous nature a shield against the shadows that lurked in the corners of her world. The pieces of her puzzle scattered, waiting to be reassembled by those who dared to seek the truth. As the investigation unfolded, hidden truths came to light, revealing a web of deceit woven by powerful hands. Elise's meticulous notes, her hidden revelations, painted a picture of corruption and greed lurking beneath the facade of respectability. The room, a silent chamber of secrets, held the key to a darkness that threatened to consume all in its path. Forensic teams combed through the room, seeking answers in the faint traces left behind. Fingers brushed against aged surfaces, searching for the imprint of a life once lived, now lost to the shadows. The scent of dust mingled with a hint of something else, a chemical ghost haunting the air, a reminder of secrets buried deep. The truth, elusive yet undeniable, lay hidden in plain sight. A hidden compartment revealed a trove of evidence, a trail of breadcrumbs leading to a truth long suppressed. The flash drives, the documents, the recordings, all pieces of a puzzle waiting to be solved, a riddle whispered in the darkness of the night. As the investigation deepened, the tendrils of corruption reached far and wide, ensnaring those who thought themselves untouchable. Elise's voice echoed through the halls of power, a reminder of the price of silence in the face of injustice. The room, a silent witness to her courage, stood as a monument to a life lost but not forgotten. In the end, justice prevailed, a beacon of light piercing the darkness of deceit. The truth, like a phoenix rising from the ashes, soared above the ruins of a shattered illusion. Elise's legacy, a whisper in the night, a promise of redemption for those who dared to seek the truth. And so the house stood empty once more, a silent sentinel guarding the memory of a young woman who dared to defy the darkness. The whispers of her story lingered in the air, a lullaby of justice for those who dared to listen. And in the stillness of the night, a single light flickered in the upstairs window, a silent tribute to the courage of a soul lost but never forgotten. Story 26. The real estate listing made no mention of a basement, and the blueprints held no clues to its existence. Yet, as the family peeled back the worn carpet in their new home, they uncovered a hidden door, its handle rusted and heavy. It took 3 of them to pry it open, unleashing a rush of stale air thick with the scent of damp earth. Descending the steps into the darkness, they anticipated finding storage, but instead they encountered a single chair beneath a swaying light bulb, casting eerie shadows, and on the wall behind a row of photographs of themselves. The Mercer family had settled into the suburban property amidst the winter's early darkness and the skeletal trees looming outside. The house, with its weathered siding and creaking floors, exuded character and history, or so they had believed. Little did they know the depth of history woven into the very walls of their new abode, and how violently it would intersect with their present. Detective Sarah Connors arrived at the scene with her partner, the crime scene unit already at work, securing the area with fluttering yellow tape. Mrs. Mercer's voice trembled as she recounted the discovery beneath their living room floor. "We must document everything before anyone else descends," Connors directed, gloving her hands with precision. Camera flashes illuminated the stairwell as the forensic team captured the chilling scene. The basement, small and stark, held a solitary chair bolted to the floor, bathed in the harsh glow of the bare bulb above. But it was the wall of photographs that seized their attention, images of the Mercer family, meticulously arranged in chronological order. "These date back weeks," noted Connor's partner, examining the timestamps on the prints. The investigation unveiled no signs of forced entry, no theft, only a violation of privacy and security. Forensics uncovered fingerprints, mostly belonging to past owners of the property, which had changed hands multiple times without any mention of a basement. Delving into the house's history revealed unsettling inconsistencies in records and renovations. The contractor from 7 years prior denied the existence of the hidden room, insisting he had gutted the space to its foundation. Data extracted from a hidden memory card revealed a trove of images, capturing not just the Mercers but past families in intimate moments. Recovered audio files hinted at sophisticated surveillance within the house, leading Connors to order a thorough search for hidden recording devices. Behind the photographs, a secret passage led to a monitoring station equipped with cameras and a journal detailing the lives of each family that had inhabited the house. The journal's author, Edward Kelvin, the house's original builder who had mysteriously vanished, had been living within its walls, observing the families like characters in his personal drama. Kelvin was eventually found hiding within the house, his body adapted to the hidden spaces he had crafted. He spoke of the families as his own, his detachment veiled in delusions of guardianship. The families, including the Mercers, fled the property, leaving behind their possessions. Kelvin's trial unveiled the extent of his surveillance network, designed into the house from its inception. As the property was demolished and the ground filled, the families carried with them the unsettling knowledge that their most private moments had been observed without their consent. They wondered if they were ever truly alone, haunted by the specter of unseen eyes and ears within the very walls they once trusted. Story 27. She entered the front door, stirring up clouds of dust in the stagnant air. The abandoned house held memories of years past, its decaying walls and shrouded furniture frozen in time. But something peculiar lingered in the air, a mystery that beckoned her deeper into its forgotten halls. Each door she opened, each path she took, only led her back to the same parlor, trapping her in an endless loop of rooms that defied logic. The only escape was the entrance she had come through, yet when she turned back, the doorway had vanished into thin air. The discovery of Morgan Pierce's lifeless body changed the narrative of the vacant Victorian from a mere relic to a crime scene shrouded in darkness. Detective Sarah Lynn stood at the threshold, observing as forensic experts moved through the dim interior like phantoms. The house had gained a reputation among the locals, a place where compasses spun aimlessly, where whispers of unseen eyes watching sent shivers down the spine. Now, beneath its dilapidated facade, secrets darker than folklore whispered their presence. The initial examination indicates she passed approximately 3 days ago, the medical examiner murmured, his words barely audible in the eerie silence. The cause of death appears to be asphyxiation. Morgan, found seated in an antique chair in the parlor, faced the entrance as if awaiting a visitor, her expression serene, hands clasped in her lap. No signs of struggle, no marks of resistance. The scene exuded a chilling calm that even seasoned investigators found unsettling. Lind inquired who discovered the body. Her partner responded. A real estate agent showing the property stumbled upon her, mistaking her for a trespasser until they drew closer. Since the passing of the previous owner, Eleanor Blackwood, the house had remained untouched, entangled in legal disputes, fading from memory except for those drawn to its enigmatic allure. Morgan Pierce, a 26-year-old graduate student delving into architectural anomalies, had been captivated by the house's reputation for disorienting its guests. Described as meticulous and driven by curiosity, she was drawn to spaces that challenged conventional norms. Her disappearance, reported by a roommate, tied back to her research on the house where wanderers lose their way. Investigation unveiled Morgan's repeated visits to the Victorian in the weeks leading to her demise. Her journal entries chronicled strange echoes, chilling drafts, and doors that played tricks on perception. In her final musings, she spoke of documenting the spatial enigmas with specialized gear that had vanished without a trace. The autopsy unearthed the peculiar detailed traces of a rare alkaloid in Morgan's system, a substance linked to shamanic rituals known to induce disorientation and vivid visions, though not in lethal doses. She was no recreational user, her boyfriend affirmed. Morgan was meticulous in her approach. She wouldn't risk distorting her senses willingly. Deleted messages recovered from Morgan's phone hinted at clandestine conversations with a kindred soul intrigued by the house's mysteries, conversations veiled in intimacy and riddles. The house holds memories of the past, one message alluded. It yearns to be understood. Suspicions turned towards Adam Reeves, an architectural historian who shared a bond with Morgan through their mutual fascination with the Victorian's enigmas. Reeves, though devastated by her demise, elucidated, the house conceals more than mere optical illusions. It harbors a secret beyond mere trickery. However, Reeves's alibi and distant location during the estimated time of Morgan's passing cast doubt on his involvement. A revelation from Eleanor Blackwood's grandson exposed a concealed family legacy of inexplicable deaths within the house's parlor, each victim found in a state of tranquility, a phenomenon dubbed the claiming. Ancestral journals unveiled a pattern of individuals succumbing to an unseen force within the house's walls, a force the family dubbed the Influence. A hidden compartment behind the parlor fireplace revealed Morgan's missing equipment alongside a chamber of artifacts from diverse cultures, arranged meticulously around a weathered figurine embodying a deity linked to threshold realms. Residue analysis linked the artifacts to the alkaloid in Morgan's system, hinting at a ritualistic connection. Forensic analysis of dust patterns hinted at a silent observer present during Morgan's final moments, their fingerprints adorning doorknobs throughout the house. Weeks into the investigation, Adam Reeves was discovered in his apartment, mirroring Morgan's serene repose, the same alkaloid in his system. Clutched in his hand was a key that unlocked the hidden chamber in the Victorian, a cryptic link to the house's secrets. In his last correspondence, Reeves inscribed, "The house doesn't bind you physically, but distorts your perception. Once you grasp the truth, you can depart, yet by then the allure grips you." The case remains unresolved, branded as mysterious deaths under scrutiny. The Victorian now condemned, its secrets veiled from prying eyes. Whispers persist of ethereal lights flickering within on certain nights, of visitors who vanish into its depths, never to return. Locals debate the fate of those ensnared by the house's enigmatic holds. Some believe it claims those who delve too deeply into its mysteries, while others speculate on ancient forces lurking within its walls. The truth evades grasp, much like an exit in a house where all doors lead back to the beginning, where reality blurs with the unknown and the shadows whisper secrets lost to time.